streaming away, we're streaming today. I hope you're doing fine. There's so many streams for us to see, but this one here is mine. I hope that you're happy. I hope that you're well. Now come on and join me. Watch the world go to hell as we are streaming today. We're streaming away. Let's stream. Let's stream today. Hey guys, how you doing today? As always, every single Monday, I'm feeling a little somber, a little zen, a little calm today, though. Calm today. Kind of an odd bittersweetness. I went down and handed out a whole lot of flyers for the upcoming protest for against the abuse that we're inflicting on our disabled and our poor. August 21st, Yonge and Dundas Square, here in Toronto, 11 a.m. Please come down and join us if you hear this. We need as many people out as we possibly can get. The reality is that as we are collapsing in this post sort of neoliberal period, hopefully it's a post neoliberal period, we'll see. But as the society has collapsed, the weakest people are the ones that are being abandoned first. And that's our poor, and that's our disabled. And so hopefully we're going to get a lot of people out on the 21st of August for a protest. We've got to do something. We've got to do something. Like, if you're disabled in this country, you don't get enough to pay your rent. And if you're disabled, you're not working. And so you either become an enormous burden on the people around you, or you live on the streets. Where do you think these homeless people are coming from? Hey Ruth, how you doing today? I did have a decent weekend, Ruth. Straight up, like Saturday, I dedicated to doing some work, handing out flyers and such for an upcoming protest. Sunday, I took for myself, and honestly, I just spent the whole day chilling out, meditating, playing with my dog, staring at the clouds, which is a beautiful thing to do. Beautiful thing to do. So I'm starting to finally finish a book that I have actually started on 3 separate occasions, and I just have never been able to actually finish, which is American Gods by Neil Gaiman. I always get to the same point and then stop. And so now I'm at that point again, and I've decided, no, I'm actually gonna get through it. And it's interesting because I don't actually read that much fiction, and a big reason I don't read that much fiction is because I feel like a lot of modern fiction is dystopian or has this sort of post dystopia kind of feel about it, and I'm honestly just that's far less interesting to me than what's actually happening in the real world. But that said, I'm going back and I'm reading this fiction book, American Gods. And it really reminds me that reading fiction is so important. It's so important to allow a different voice into your head, right? And not just one that's information about the information. Here's some information for your information, but one that's actually crafting an alternative world, one where the world around you is different, where the world around you is unique, and allowing a voice inside of your head that is not your own. And I think that that's actually very dangerous for capitalist power structures, that a big reason why the capitalist class wants you to be illiterate and doesn't want you to actually read, especially fiction, is because it needs you to live in a very narrow, single-minded bandwidth. That if you actually spend time living someone else's life, living someone else's imagination, right? That'll actually allow you to be more empathetic or compassionate to those around you, which is just devastating for capitalism. That capitalism needs you to be like a rapacious sociopath, single-minded on your own selfishness. And if you read, it's very difficult to hold that view, because if you can have compassion for this protagonist that you don't even know and doesn't even exist as a real person, then you can have compassion for other people around you. Ruth, I was in the garden and planning the next project. I haven't sat and read a book in a long time. My head isn't there right now. I respect that a lot. It's very, I actually find it to be quite, like there's so much going on and there's so much anxiety and there's so much like flickering energy around all the time that simply to sit down and focus in on, words on a page, and to maintain the focus of the stream of consciousness that's required to do reading. It does have like a meditative act there, and there's something about releasing yourself, right? Like the voice that you're allowing take over your brain does require a kind of a relinquishment of your own internal ongoing monologue. And if you're in this kind of heightened state of constant distraction that capitalism sort of foists on us, or if you're too exhausted to be able to do this, then you can't. And so it's something of a luxury, honestly, for me right now. And yeah, watching documentaries is a good way, but again, like I feel like a documentary is informative. You're getting lots of information that way. And I'm like, and I think the thing that I'll really pound on and really encourage people when we're talking about reading, specifically fiction, because I think fiction gets kind of a raw deal. People kind of view fiction as a escapism or as as kind of a lowbrow form of reading. But really, like, what you are fundamentally doing is you are relinquishing control of your own consciousness to someone else completely. That your inner monologue is replaced by someone else, and you're allowing that to happen. And I think that that's very powerful. I think that's a very powerful thing to do, to allow someone else to take over your consciousness and to give permission to relinquish. And I think that that's why people struggle with reading, is that we have this idea of tight control of ourselves, and you are the author of your own fate and all that kind of stuff. Well, if you're the author of your own fate and of your own story, then relinquishing control of that to anyone else, even somebody who's just like winding a story about like an invisible dome covering a city, like a Stephen King novel or something, I think that's quite difficult. But the act of doing it itself is quite powerful, because if you can allow and empathize with someone else's narrative in your own consciousness, then you can imagine or understand someone else's plight in the real world. And so I always encourage people, like, don't diminish fiction. That's why when people make fun of the Bible, like atheists make fun of the Bible, and like, oh, it's all fiction, and I'm like, so? As if fiction isn't powerful, as if fiction doesn't have a place in Western civilization. Yeah, the border will open and COVID in the USA is up 54%. Yeah, Ruth. Yeah, there are places in the US now where and I think I actually have, is it this fella? Yeah. So Hassan Abbey just did a great, I think I'll wait a little bit on this and see how I feel, if I'm going to play the whole thing or not, but it's just littered with data. And so I think I'm going to relinquish about a half hour of my stream to this, because this is true, like, this is real reporting what Hassanabi is doing here. Like, it's quite impressive, actually. So we'll go through it soon enough. Hey, Damn Boxes, how you doing today, bud? Good to see you. I did find some time to read through Michael Parenti's Black Shirts and Reds the other weekend. It was absolutely worth it. Took me a long time to finally commit to it. Yes, absolutely. I don't think I've actually read. It's funny. I have so much respect for Michael Parenti as a lecturer. I have never read a single thing he's written. He's like, because I think I came to him so late in the conversation. I had already gone through quite a bit of Noam Chomsky and Chris Hedges, Richard Wolff recently. And then Michael Parenti kind of popped up through YouTube lectures and things like this. And his lectures are so powerful. Like it's very, very powerful, his lectures. And so sitting down and reading through one of his books, absolutely, what a treat that must have been. Very informative, I wager. And I think one of his most interesting lectures, and the book I'd actually love to read the most, is he got in as a historian of like Roman culture, and he has this really wonderful lecture that he gave about Julius Caesar, and how we have this kind of idea that Julius Caesar was a tyrant and all of this, but Parenti actually paints a very interesting picture of Julius Caesar as a great reformer of Rome, and that his theory is that the reason why Julius Caesar gets assassinated by the Roman Senate is because he starts to reform the slave systems. And Julius Caesar actually lays a lot of the groundwork for the creation of the serfdom system that takes over after the fall of the Roman Empire. And that this transfer of power, of slave ownership away from the Roman senators, who are the wealthy people, right, to slaves being owned by the land instead, which relinquishes a great deal of power from these senators, is reason number one why Julius Caesar is assassinated. Because that is something of a question. Like, why is Julius Caesar assassinated? Like, sure he was, a powerful military leader who took over the power structures, but he had to have been doing something to affront these guys. And Parenti's theory is that that he attempted not abolish slavery, but to transition slavery into a less harrowing form, which is serfdom, and then ultimately serfdom transitions into what we have now, which is just kind of a neo-serfdom. Like it's like a wage serfdom. Like there's a you can leave any job you like, but the jobs that exist only exist at the behest of the capitalist class. That it doesn't matter if there's big demand for something, if the capitalists don't want it to exist, it won't. So, anywho. Great article coming out of CBC News. People who say to me that, like, there is a movement that exists on the far right, abolish the CBC, I think that that's just some garbage right there. Like, you want a state-funded news organization. You do. And honestly, all of the arguments that they use against the CBC, even if I accept all of them, even if I just shrug and go like, yep, that's all true, I still want a state-funded organization because it's a different voice in the media narrative. I don't want every media outlet to be owned by a billionaire. I don't want every media outlet to be a privately owned billionaire place. And having a state-run news organization like CBC, at the very least, gives a different perspective with a different viewpoint and different objectives, right? And not just a Lytton problem. A BC village burned to the ground just one day after a record-breaking heat wave. Residents say it's a warning to the rest of Canada. I'm not seeing this kind of article coming out of, like, the Globe and Mail. I'm not seeing this happen in the National Post, right? In the extreme heat of late June, apples were literally baking on the branches of a tree in John Hoggin's yard before much of the village of Lytton, BC, burned down. The apples were cooking on one side and they were turning brown, and on the inside there was still green, he recalled in a recent interview. Some people's chickens were dying in their chicken houses because it was too hot for them. Temperatures in Lytton hit 46.6 Celsius one day and 47.9 Celsius the next, before finally peaking at 49.6 Celsius on June 29th, breaking the Canadian record for hottest temperature recorded for 3 straight days. Throughout the small Fraser Cannon village, sweltering residents were stuffing wet blankets into windows in an attempt to protect themselves from the dangerous heat, and hiding out in basements if they were lucky enough to have them. The village's swimming pool was out of commission because of broken pumps. At the time, Hoggin was acting chief of the Lytton First Nation and spent the morning of June 29th speaking to a radio host in Arizona about the record-breaking heat. The night before, an elderly friend had been rushed to the hospital for heat-related illness. He was trying to make fun of our little town, Hoggin said of the radio host. I told him it was nothing to brag about, that it's affecting people, especially elders. Extreme summer heat has long been a point of pride for Lytton, which likes to call itself Canada's hotspot. But the summer of 2021 began with alarming weather that quickly turned into a tragedy. Like, you're not going to get this kind of news and this kind of writing. I mean, first of all, much of the private news is rife with white supremacy. Like, the National Post has become, in my view, an outright white supremacist outlet. It's very difficult to argue otherwise. They allow people like Rex Murphy. They have plenty of commentators who are willing to use, like, woke speak and all that kind of dumb, obvious fascist, white supremacist, dog-whistling kind of narrative. And they're never going to talk about Lytton with any genuine concern or care because Lytton is a First Nations town, right? Yeah, Ruth, you're exactly right. That's the point, though. If it's private, we become Fox and CNN. Yeah, and it's just like billionaires owning the discourse, right? Like, that's the reason why the whole thing is going to come collapsing down ultimately, is because the only story that anyone wants to pay any attention to is what's going on with these billionaires. And the number one story that the private media can't report on is what's going on with the billionaires. So you'll never actually get them to talk about that. It'll never actually happen. And so people will flee from these main, quote-unquote, mainstream media sources more and more. And independent media sources will steadily become more and more prominent, more and more important, because they're the ones that are actually going to be talking about issues that actually matter to the majority of Canadians. And the number one issue that people are concerned about going into this next election is climate change. And so a story like this coming out of the CBC, I think, is far more important than any story I've seen in literally any private-owned news station, maybe in the last 5 years. Yeah, we won't. Hey, Macht, how you doing, bud? We won't experience global warming for hundreds of years, so why are all these wildfires, Ben? Oh, is this a Ben Shapiro thing? Yeah, Ben Shapiro is like a detached sociopath. Like, he really is. Like, and especially as time moves forward, I'm really, really seeing him more and more as just like a little boy who never actually had to be confronted with anything real. He's always had his hand held. He's never been told no. Right, he wants to go speak at Harvard University, and his daddy pays money, so he gets to go debate college students who attempt to take him seriously when he isn't serious at all. Like, the only thing that's serious about Ben Shapiro is his influence, right? And that's kind of the terrifying thing, that someone like Ben Shapiro has millions of followers who actually listen to him and take him seriously, and he's essentially a neo-fascist, right? Like, he supports wiping out minority groups. He supports the destruction of Arabs. And on top of this, he's incredibly stupid, right? He's incredibly stupid, saying idiotic, moronic things like, well, people will just sell their houses if the sea levels go up and move. Like, sell them to who, Ben? Like, this is a very and it's such an obvious thing to rebut, and yet he continuously says it. His last appearance on Joe Rogan, he said it, and Joe Rogan just let it slide because Joe Rogan was more interested in other things. But like, it's terrifying to me that the people who are at the top of the discourse, with the most amount of followers, are fascists who are incredibly stupid. Like, that's very, very concerning to me. And hopefully, channels like mine and like and others around will start to gain more traction and hopefully channels like his will begin to decline. And we've seen this happen before. Like, Sam Harris is a great example of this. That Sam Harris had a cresting sort of support, and a little bit rightfully, because he spoke out against evangelical Christians and the evangelical sort of fundamentalist fascists. But once he had garnered that support, he moved on and essentially became like kind of a crazed Islamophobe, right? Very pro-imperialist. His pro-torture argument, he never stepped down from. One of the only people who has never recanted from taking a pro-torture position. And because of these things, and because leftists like Chris Hedges, for example, repudiated him, his support declined. And I hope to see a similar thing happen to Steven Crowder, Ben Shapiro, these guys, as people begin to kind of grow up and realize, like, oh, these guys are actually morons and highly dangerous. Like, if we were to actually follow through with the way that the Shapiros of the world think, we would be living in a horrible, horrific, oppressive police state that would make what we're already doing look like baby time, right? Like, these fascists genuinely want to do massive damage to the world and don't seem connected at all to any of the realities or consequences or history that these things exist in. And like, Shapiro's stupidity can't be overstated. Like, this is a guy who literally walks around saying facts don't care about your feelings, while simultaneously believing that he has a magic book that gives him rules that he has to attempt to explain, right? Like, this is the cognitive dissonance that exists in his mind, that he simultaneously believes that he lives in a world of fact while simultaneously clinging on to a book that he believes is magic, right? And it seems like no left commentator or interviewer or anyone wants to point this out. It seems like there's no one in the discourse who's willing to stand up and point out of Ben Shapiro. This guy is holding up a book and calling it magic, saying that it was written by a deity and that we have to adhere to it and alter the way that we think of the world because I believe this book is magic. It's childishness. It's overt and obvious childishness, and yet no one is talking about him this way. No one is standing up and saying, like, they're saying, like, he's dumb or he's a fascist, but nobody is pointing out that, like, he believes that magic is real. Like, how does this not completely discredit him as a speaker from the very beginning? And he's very outspoken about it. You can find plenty of clips of him saying that he believes that the book he has is magic and that the rules in it should be adhered to because a magic being told him so, right? Like this is the obtuse level of his stupidity. And yet we're supposed to, take him seriously because he speaks quickly? Like, this is the strategy of a con man and a grifter. Just talk as fast as possible. Don't allow people to parse what you're saying. And if they do attempt to parse what you're saying, just move on to something else, right? Like, he's not intelligent. He's just rich. And that's the Ben Shapiro story, and I hope to see him kind of go away sooner rather than later. This Lytton story is terrifying to me, man. Yeah, Lytton, the canary in the tar sands, said Gordon Murray, a Lytton resident whose video footage of fleeing the fire has been shared around the world. It's really a wake-up call for Canada and BC. We considered that we were immune to climate change and that at most would be a positive thing because we could get to the beach more. But that's not the way it works. It's not just making it a little bit warmer. It's creating these huge, extreme events, and that's not just a Lytton problem. Burnt-out cars stand in front of a ruined building in Lytton, BC on July 9th, 2021. Like, people don't quite understand. Like, we're not going to be able to just relocate. We're not just going to be able to create a new technology or adapt to this, right? Fire will cleanse us, right? Like, it's not a joke. It's not something that we are fucking around with. And it seems to me like we are not acting like adults about it. We're not acting like adults about this. We've allowed, first of all, the Conservative Party is living in delusional la-la land about this. Literally, the party refuses to acknowledge the existence of climate change. In my view, this makes them the most dangerous political organization that's ever existed on the planet. There is no more dangerous organization than the modern Conservative and Republican parties, simply because they are standing up and denying the existence of this climate change event. And the idea that, 25 to 30% of the population is completely on board with this is terrifying. It's this terrifying childishness that I don't know what to even say to anymore. What do you even say to the 1 in 4 people who are still willing to go along with this absolute, overt, crazy climate change denialism while cities and towns are being confronted with the reality of being burned down due to climate change? And then when you move over and look at what the liberals are doing, the liberals are playing this game of pandering and then doing nothing. Right? Buying pipelines, continuing the problems while doing small-scale absurd things like banning straws. Like tiny, irrelevant, incremental things. Things like if there was a tsunami coming, right? And your leadership like put up a single dinghy to attempt to stop the wave of the tsunami, you wouldn't accept that. That wouldn't be something that you would think is good or important, and yet 30% of the populace is still voting Liberal. At least. It could be as high as 40% of the populace is still going to vote for these people who are obviously conning us. They're obviously willing to stand up and say, yes, climate change is real, yes, it's a problem, sure, we'll do something about it, and then the things that they're doing are so irrelevant and so small scale that it's obvious that they're just being duplicitous in order to allow us to continue to plunge ourselves towards a climate change apocalypse because of the capitalist system. That, yes, exactly, capitalism will destroy our planet. That is exactly right. I don't know what to call you, friend. You have a very Russian-looking name there. Narob? Would that be fair? And then, of course, there's gigantic, big questions about what the NDP are up to, right? What are the NDP even up to in this? Like, sure, they're saying all of the liberal things, right? But I'm not seeing the mobilization of the war effort that is going to be required to actually take on this climate change catastrophe. Well, Igor, I'm glad you're here, bud. Thanks for coming, mate. And if the NDP aren't actually going to begin mobilizing a war effort, then our populace is just going to sleepwalk itself to catastrophe. That's what's going to happen. We are just going to sleepwalk ourselves. We're going to, grind our nose in, and we're going to put our head down, and we're going to keep doing these pointless, meaningless, hurtful jobs. These jobs that are actively adding to the problem. And when the fire comes to cleanse our cities, our politicians will just shrug and abandon us like they abandoned Lytton, right? They're not going to try to do anything about it. They don't give a fuck, right? They don't care at all. They're going to retreat to their gated palaces and their gated communities, and we are just going to be left to our own devices and told that, well, that's the free market deciding. And morons like Ben Shapiro will stand up and tell us, just sell your property and move, because people are going to want to buy big burnt out shells of cities, right? That the childish incompetence that we are dealing with at this stage in the game is unbelievable. It's unbelievable to me that we are dealing with this scale of childish incompetence. That our leaders are literally complete and total denialists, white supremacists and fascists, or just empty haircuts who like to wear costumes, who read cue cards and then do everything the oil industry tells them to do, with like the most meager and moderate pandering possible to its own base to just get them to shut up about it. In the meantime, the one organization that you think would actually be mobilizing people in a revolutionary way in order to structure a war economy to actually fight against this climate change issue seems real soft. So we'll see as we move forward towards this election. Maybe the NDP will grow a spine. Maybe they'll actually start talking a game that sounds better than just like the orange liberalism that they're putting forward. But the time to rebel is now. Like, this is the reason why. Like, there's no wage shortage in Canada. Labor shortage in America and Canada, right? There's a lot of hullabaloo being about like a labor shortage. Like, no. People just don't want to work for jobs that they know are structured to destroy them. Like, you want me to go work for a Wendy's flipping burgers for people who are actively destroying the planet? And this job, by the way, tears down the Amazon rainforest, which is exactly the thing we need in order to fight against climate change. Like, how much money am I willing to accept in order to destroy myself completely? Let's flip burgers in the middle of an apocalypse to make the problem worse and then burn to death. How much money are you going to have to pay me to accept that arrangement? Turns out the answer is there is no amount, that the job should not exist, that we are just fattening ourselves up like fat calves so that when the fire comes, our flesh will really pop, I guess. Like, I'm not going to participate in this. I'm not going to participate in this arrangement, and anybody who thinks that they should participate in this arrangement, I think has lost their mind completely. Like, I think you literally are insane at this point if you're standing in front of me saying, hey, go work a job at McDonald's while this place burns to the ground. Like, no more. We need to be paying people to stay home. We need to be stopping. We need to be doing way, way, way less. We need to, and all of these white supremacists crying about it, saying like, oh, you're going to destroy the economy. Yeah, that's the point. We're supposed to destroy this economy. This economy needs to be destroyed, right? It's like complaining that like a serial killer is breaking into my house and I shoot him, and then you complain because I murdered a guy. Like, no, I murdered somebody. Like, I defended myself while somebody was attempting to kill me, right? Is it unfortunate? Yeah, obviously it's unfortunate. I would prefer it's a situation that doesn't exist at all. But guess what? We're adults. The situation does exist. The economy as it's structured now is going to kill us all. It's going to destroy each and every one of us. And if we don't kill this economy, it will absolutely kill us first. So to me, this is a matter of life and death. And honestly, I think at this stage in the game, if you're disagreeing with that, you're kind of Looney Tunes. You're just completely disconnected and out of touch. Like, you're living in like a dream world, like a fantasy land. And guess what? The fire's not going to give a fuck about your delusion. It's not going to give a fuck at all. Hey, Max, how you doing, bud? Haven't seen you around here. Haven't seen around a great ego, capitalism, all about endless growth. It's unsustainable. Yes, of course it's unsustainable. Of course it's like, imagine standing up and legitimately saying that in the face of all evidence, unlike every creature that exists in existence, unlike any system that exists in existence, unlike anything that is observable or scientific or factual or real, we believe that our system can grow forever, can just continuously grow, line goes up forever. You're a delusional child. You're just out of touch with reality if this is what you're saying. I hit 600 and then of course I dip back down, and this makes my heart clench when I oh good. Well, Igor, thank you so much, sir. I hit 600 and then I dip back down, then I hit 600 again, and I hate the round numbers. That's why I don't really celebrate them that much. Like, you guys celebrate them a lot, and I'm like really happy about that, and that's wonderful. But it always happens. It goes up and then it dips and then it goes back up and then it dips and then it goes back up again. And I hate to get too celebratory because it just makes my heart clench. It's like, like the channel is going to completely collapse on me. Like, one day I'll log in and suddenly I'll have 100 subscribers again, you know? I know that's not rational, but that's what the fear is. That's what the clench is. Oh, you guys would not believe what I'm looking at right down here, bud. I got my little puppy and he's looking up at me. Do you want to come up, bud? Do you want to come up and say hello to everybody? Milo, do you want to come up? Oh, no, he doesn't want. He just wants some pets and some peanut. Oh. Okay, buddy. Okay, buddy. Oh. Okay, I won't do it. Okay, buddy. Little peanut butter for you. Little peanut butter. Sorry, guys. Super distracted moment. Welcome to my stream. Things are a bit schizophrenic around here. I literally go from being like, the world is an apocalyptic hellscape and we're dream walking towards our own destruction, to like, I have a little pug puppy. He's a little pug puppy and he needs peanut butter. But I feel like that's completely indicative of who I am as a person in the society we live in. A bit schizophrenic. Like, how many times have you been going through you're going through your scroll, right? And it's like, oh, puppies. Oh, feel good story. Oh, no, the climate change apocalypse is upon us. And then you scroll up, it's puppies again, right? Like, we have like our whole society, and you kind of said it before, Ruth, that it's sad that social media has come to this, and social media is really revealing, in my perspective, that like we are kind of manic. Like, people are kind of manic. Like, we're willing to go on emotional roller coasters, and social media just takes us through this like emotional ringer of just like, in one moment you're laughing and you're happy and you're living in a world where there's just like a duck, you know, swimming in a funny way, and there's like baby ducks and all of this. And then you hit the next button and you're living in a world where like Matt Gaetz is having sex with an underage teenager while sitting in the Congress, and you're like, oh, I can't believe it. Then you hit next and it's like some dude like doing a sick kickflip off the roof that you think is going to go bad, but then he completely lands it. And then you hit next and it's like, watch a tornado destroy this guy's house, and you're like, we're just, and that's literally just like not even 5 minutes of just basic social media scrolling, that you're just bombarded completely with the ups and the downs and the aggression and the absurd like thrum of what it is to be a human being, without any sense of like theme or connection, and it's just mania. That and what I feel like we're really learning about social media, and what we're learning about ourselves through social media, is that we are kind of manic. Like, humanity is just kind of this thronging, like, just like, and it needs to be, like, entertained, and it needs to be, it has hungers that have to be sated, and it's got bloodthirst and lust, and just, like, this pounding, never-ending need to do, which I think is, like, the number one thing that's got us into the trouble that we're in. That when people like me stand up and say, hey, we should do less, this is, like, the most affronting thing. And it doesn't matter if you're, like, a fascist or if you're a liberal or even some socialists. People can't really wrap their head around the idea of do less, right? Just, like, do less. And we genuinely believe of ourselves that no, the solution must be for us to do more and to do something. It must be to do something. But that's not the case at all. The solution is actually stop, do less. The world will heal itself. Because we genuinely cannot admit that the world is more powerful than we are. That's something that we really struggle with as a people. We really struggle with this fact that the world is more powerful than we are. That we say it's completely true in our language, right? We say climate change will destroy the world. No, it won't. The world will be fine. We're fucked. Like, we're fucked. The world will be fine. Like, it's, as George Carlin said, right? It's going to shake us off like a bad case of fleas. And it's going to continue on. Maybe give this attempt at finding intelligent life or creating intelligent life another shot, right? A couple million years down the road, let's see. Maybe the sloths will have a shot at it, right? Maybe the beavers will have a shot at it, right? Like, we evolved from monkeys. Like, there's every reason to believe that once we destroy this place for ourselves and we can no longer really habitate it in any successful way, that some other species will come up and have another crack at it. And who knows, maybe the AI will get good enough before we wipe ourselves out that it'll be able to continue the process forward, right? And that's exactly right, Max. Society needs to meditate, learn from monks. Just there's a movement throughout China called the Lie Flat movement. Just I like, what is this about? Like, what is this about? Like, what are we doing here? What are we genuinely doing here? Like, what is it that we're attempting to accomplish? What is it that we're attempting to achieve? I mean, I'm not asking these things as if there are genuine answers to them, but the fact that we're not willing to actually dwell on these ideas. And, like, what's the point of having a society if not to make the lives of its citizens as easy as possible, or as happy as possible, or as content as possible? What's the purpose of a society if not to attempt to ameliorate any kind of suffering, or attempt to find a place of peace and sustainability? Like, at its base root, any society should be really in complete contemplation about how to make this place better for the next generation. That should always be the primary goal for any society, that we want to make this place better for the next generation. And if your society is not focused on that as a primary and central task, then it's not a society, right? And it's, as I say all the time on this channel, like, our society is like it's like a parody society. It's like a satirical society that an actual stable real society would create to make fun of us, a people. Like, if I were attempting to make a fake society in a fictional book in order to kind of have a laugh at the idea of a society that's not actually taking care of itself, it would be this one. Because if a society isn't even attempting to replace its own citizens and create a world that is more beneficial for its own citizens yet to come, then it's not really a society, is it? It's just this pretend veneer of a false society as we act like the primal apes that we apparently are, right? And like, I listened to Stephen Harper's interview yesterday, and I did a video about it. And the thing that shocked me so much is that he's essentially a barbarian, right? He's essentially a barbarian who is strictly interested in the full-scale abandonment of even his own children to this death cult level ideology. That there's this heightened hardcore ideology of private industry, eternal growth, and profit, that he is completely willing to sacrifice even the lives of his own children in order to sustain and maintain. And the level of delusion and denialism that he maintains in order to achieve this is shocking. Like, it's shocking that there is someone who considers themselves an intelligent adult standing up in the conversation and saying that climate change is not a problem. Like, I don't understand how you expect to be taken seriously moving forward. But what's terrifying is that a third of the population does take it serious. And yet we're the nihilists, right? Like, that's right. Stephen Harper wants to destroy the entire species and all life on the planet for profit, but we're the nihilists, right? Igor asks, what do you think about Greenpeace and WWF? Oh yeah, brother, the WWF. No, you mean the World Wildlife Federation, I know. I think that Greenpeace, and I know less about the WWF in this regard, so I don't want to speak on it and lump them together. But I suspect, and I'm very suspicious of a lot of these environmental movements that I think have been co-opted by capitalists. I think that capitalists have essentially co-opted movements like Greenpeace and probably the WWF in order to turn them into kind of feel-good projects, like Jeff Bezos but he gives away $100 billion to one of his buddies, and he calls that charity, and it makes him feel good, and he pats himself on the back. And that's, in my view, kind of where Greenpeace and the WWF are at. That, billionaires and millionaires throw a pittance towards these organizations that then, turn around and essentially just put on kind of a big show, but aren't really doing anything significant. Like, if Greenpeace was actually shutting down infrastructure, if Greenpeace was actually going out and shutting down these oil wells and like, for God's sakes, in the Gulf of Mexico, like, the ocean was on fire. We opened up like a dark portal to hell in the Gulf of Mexico. Like, we need to be shutting that infrastructure down. Like, literally, we need to be shutting that fucking infrastructure down. And Greenpeace isn't doing that. The WWF isn't doing that, right? Why? Because they're owned by the same people that own those oil rigs, right? And they're not actually doing what must be done in order to prevent any of this kind of climate change apocalypse. And I can't really blame them, right? The people that actually do what must be done, the people who are actually standing in the way of the infrastructure and standing in the way of these, capitalist death cult projects, they go to jail, right? They go to jail. And so it's the entire system and the entire structure of the capitalist death cult has been structured in order to punish people for refusing to participate in their own destruction, and punish people for attempting to prevent the continued exploitation and the continued destruction of the species, right? Like, that's why I say over and over again, like, we are sleepwalking to our death. We're literally going to burn to death while doing what we're told. That we are just going to listen and believe that organizations like Greenpeace and the WWF, which has been completely co-opted by the very forces we need to stop, are doing the job, and they're not. Like, they're just not. Like, we need to be blocking major infrastructure. We need to be blocking major roads. We need to be blocking major highways. We need to be blocking major industries. We need major mass high-level strikes. Am I seeing Greenpeace and the WWF organize along those lines? No, right? They're doing like charity fundraisers, right? And they'll have like a float in the Macy's Day Parade or something, right? Like, I don't see them actually organizing any kind of movement to shut down major infrastructure projects in large scale ways, like, which is exactly what we have to be doing. Like, that's exactly what we have to be doing. And there is no alternative any longer. Like, the alternative is literally just burn down like Lytton did. And so, will we see it? I don't know. I'm organizing, or I'm not, I shouldn't say that I am organizing, but I am helping to organize a shutdown of Yonge and Dundas Square here in Toronto, which is like Times Square in New York, or at least it's attempting to be. And we're going to shut it down in protest of the treatment of the disabled, August 21st. If you're in Toronto, come on down, right? 11 a.m., August 21st, Yonge and Dundas Square. And the shutting down of that infrastructure, like, so far all we've been managed to do is to be able to do it with like 10 people for 2-3 hours, right? I want to see like 1,000 people, and I want to see that 1,000 people take that square over for the day. And I mean, I think that people should be taking over those sorts of things permanently, that people need to be confronted with the reality of this abandonment that people are experiencing. And these issues are only getting worse. Like, they're only getting worse. And I don't see Greenpeace and the WWF helping. Like, I don't see them coming out to these protests. I don't see any Greenpeace signs or WWF signs. I think it's just a way for rich people to feel good about themselves and pretend like they're helping while they go around in their private jets and spew bullshit into the atmosphere and all this kind of stuff, right? Like, it's just like as if Adolf Hitler put on a peace symbol or a Greenpeace thing and said, okay, we're good. Like, no thanks. Like, I don't really take these organizations seriously, because I don't think that they are serious. And speaking about climate change, right? So this one comes from Canadian Dimension, giving a ton of good sources, right? Climate Capitalism and Regimes of Obstruction. 2 new books expose the forces holding us back from real climate action in Canada. My hope is that I'm going to go get some of these books, because I think that, like, my line on the climate change deal is very simple. I will only believe that we are beginning to confront climate change when the people who have obstructed us from moving against climate change through propaganda, through major campaigns in order to continue pushing us towards climate change apocalypse, until those people are in jail, and I don't mean arrested, I don't mean fined, I don't mean censored, I don't mean any of that. I mean literally they have been arrested, tried, and they are in jail. That is the moment when I will believe that we are beginning to care about climate change. And until that moment happens, no, it's all just a fart. It's just a fucking fart. When Justin Trudeau stands up and starts talking, he's just farting out of his mouth. And this article, like this, really tells us who is actually responsible for this, right? So, before I move on, Mach, isn't it funny how we sometimes call some trash bins recycling bins, even though they are made of plastic? Well, and the recycling grift is exactly what I'm talking about, right? Like, most recycling doesn't happen. Or most of the time, the recycling goes into the trash heap just like everything else. And this is exactly what I'm talking about when I'm talking, like, that's very liberal. That's a very liberal response to climate change, is to create 2 bins and say your recycling goes here and your garbage goes here, and then they take both of those garbage bags and throw them into the exact same spot, right? That's exactly what's happening here in Canada. That the amount of recycling that's happening is certainly not even close to the scale that we need to be doing to confront the climate change apocalypse that's coming our way. Because at the end of the day, the liberals, they're not interested in actually fighting against climate change. They're not interested in that. They're interested in looking like they're fighting against climate change so that you'll keep voting for them. That's all they care about. Because they're simpering, weak cowards. Very, very simple. They're just simpering, weak cowards. Yeah, not all plastic can be recycled. Chip bags can't be recycled because they're part of aluminum, and yet we make them, right? And yet we make them. Like, there's so many things that, like, I feel like, so we're doing that shit for chip bags, like for chips. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, this is what's insane to me. I'm to a point now where I'm just saying, look, if you can't recycle it, it shouldn't be made. Very simple. That why are we throwing everything into a trash heap instead of insisting that everything be recycled? But that would actually require passing legislation and passing regulation, right? Which the liberals aren't interested in doing because they're weak. Hey, Onward, how you doing today, bud? I was out and about here in Atlanta today, saw several moving trucks. One person was just hauling stuff on their roof, and a small trailer. Well, people move. People move. But this book here, there's two books. The Big Stall, How Big Oil and Think Tanks Are Blocking Action on Climate Change in Canada, and then Regime of Obstruction, How Corporate Power Blocks Energy Democracy. Apparently this one is actually free. So I'm going to see if I can't get a hold of these books and then do a little bit of a book report, because it's time to start naming names, right? It's time to start saying, like, hey, here's a sociopath who needs to go to jail. And if he's not in jail, then we don't care about climate change, right? And so far we've been pointing out, so one side of the industry strategy has always involved getting the ear of government. To that end, perhaps no organization has been more effective than the Business Council of Canada, an organization made up of the CEOs of the largest companies in Canada. Specifically on climate, the council had since 2007 called for a low price on carbon, a carbon tax, as a way to gain social license for continuing and expanding the fossil fuel industry. Then Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper didn't bite, seemingly believing he knew better what was good for the private sector than they did. And here we get to the shorter story Gustin tells about how Trudeau and Notley governments failed to take decisive action on climate, but sold themselves as serious champions of the environment. Before Trudeau's election, he was on the same page as the Business Council. At the Calgary Petroleum Club in 2013, he told the high-powered crowd, if we had stronger environmental policy in this country, stronger oversight, tougher penalties, and yes, some sort of means to price carbon pollution, then I believe the Keystone XL pipeline would have been approved already. Just after the Liberals' 2015 election victory, the president of the Business Council, Paul Manley, a former Liberal cabinet minister and leadership candidate, wrote in iPolitics, calling on Trudeau to enact responsible climate policy and facilitate the export of energy resources. Trudeau soon announced carbon pricing and the approval of the Trans Mountain Expansion and Line 3 export pipelines. So here you see it clear as day, that Trudeau is throwing a crumb in the direction of the populace, right? To placate them enough to pretend as though he genuinely cares about climate issues, while simultaneously using that as a political token in order to expand the fossil fuel industry's power and influence, right? This should be considered a crime. This should be considered treason against the Canadian people. The people, all of them who are involved in this process, should be arrested, tried, and incarcerated at an international place such as The Hague. Like it's as black and white an issue on that. Oh, Onward, of course. I didn't connect what you were saying at all to what's happening. I have a tab on this, of course. I'm so stuck on climate change. Sorry, bud. Yes, the evictions. The goddamn evictions. It's already happening, of course. Yes, so with that said, your comment, out and about in Atlanta today, saw several moving trucks. one person who is just hauling stuff on their roof and a small trailer. Like, yes, there's going to be mass evictions. There's going to be hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people displaced because of this, right? Like I remember when I was first thinking about it. I haven't actually made a video or spoken on this because it's so unbelievable. It's so unfucking believable. How can it be believed? How can you believe that you live in a society where the governor, the people who are responsible for the governance of the society know that this eviction moratorium that was in place through the pandemic is going to end. They know it's going to end. And literally days before the end of this eviction moratorium, they all just say, okay, we're all going on vacation, which means that for a period of 2 months, these people are going to just simply not be there as one of the largest, most egregious actions that can happen in a society unfolds. And they're literally saying that we will not respond to it, that we will just stand back and close our eyes and not pay attention whatsoever to the reality that hundreds, if not thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people are going to be thrown out onto the streets. They're going to be evicted from their homes, and they're not going to have any place else to go. You don't live in a society. You don't live in a society. You live in a business. That's it. Your society is a business. It's not interested in taking care of its citizenry. It's interested in making money for itself, and if you can't participate, it will displace you completely. Yeah, but it was noticeable. Most people are clueless and would just think, a lot of moving trucks on the road today. Well, and like, where are these people going to go? Like, where are these people going to go? Like, they can't go anywhere. They can't move anywhere. They don't have any money. They don't have any ability to get anywhere or do anything. Like, where are these people going to go? And it's so self-defeating from the capitalist perspective, because these people that you are banishing ostensibly from your society, these people are going to turn around and be your most vocal critics. And they've got nothing left to lose, right? They've got no homes. They've got nowhere to be. They literally live on the streets. One assumes that anytime there's any kind of gathering whatsoever in protest, that they would be involved in it. And the idea that we're just supposed to accept this, that we're just supposed to shrug and say, like, well, I should have just sold their houses and moved, like we're a bunch of fucking morons. I don't like, if anything indicates the overwhelming, barbarous, sociopathic nature of the capitalist death cult, it is this. That they literally cannot put together that housing people is better than not housing people. And we know for a fact that it's actually cheaper to do. That's the most blistering part about this, is that it's actually just cheaper to take people off the streets and to give them homes than it is to continuously tolerate their homelessness and poverty and pay for the services that you have to erect in order to maintain that system. It's this blistering sociopathic demand that everyone has to adhere to this far-right neoliberal fascist ideology of sell yourself into wage slavery so that what? Like, this is the big question I keep asking these capitalists. So that what? Like, what's the outcome here? What's the outcome of your system? What's your system generating? What's it creating? because it's not prosperity, obviously. You've got millions of people living homeless in the street, right? It's not prosperity. That's obviously false. It's not infrastructure. You're not building anything, right? So what is it? What is it that we're doing here? What is it that we're supposed to be all looking towards and saying, oh, good, our society is functioning because of what exactly, right? If it's not prosperity, if it's not even infrastructure, are we literally supposed to just be worshiping like Richard Branson going to space? Is that literally what this is about? That I'm supposed to watch millions and millions and millions of people become homeless throughout America and in Canada for nothing? For just fucking nothing? And then the most deluded and bullshit and moronic people, the same people who are like walking around saying we shouldn't have masks and shit, are actively saying just get a job. Just get a job. Like it's literally like a cross-eyed like, dude, just get a job. You just go out and get a job. You just get a job. As if the capitalists are hiring, right? And the jobs that they are hiring for are literally burn down the Amazon rainforest so I can jam another fucking burger in my face. No thank you. Like, no thank you. And we're supposed to tolerate this. I don't understand why in God's name anyone would tolerate this. And yet here we are. Because we're all individuals, right? Your individualism is what's individually happening to you as an individual. So you need to individually individualize, and then you can individually individualize your individualization to the individual. It's so fucking childish. It's so fucking childish that, how dare we demand that the structures designed to protect us from the worst outcomes of the natural world and society, how dare we demand that they do that, right? Oh, hey, we erected a governmental system to govern so that we don't need to worry about these large meta concerns. How dare we insist they govern? How dare we insist they do their fucking job, right? And if they're not going to, then they have no reason to exist. It really is that simple. If they're not going to actually do the job that they're obviously there for, the only legitimate reason to have a governmental structure is for them to govern, right? And if they're not going to actually govern, then they don't need to be paid attention to at all, right? And this is my general opinion of America, generally, that like they're not interested, like your federal government's not interested in governing. Right? It's interested in making money for billionaires. That's it. That's all they care about. They're not interested in anything else whatsoever. And so, by what right do they have to govern? Because they're not. They're literally not. Right? It's the same as when like Marie Antoinette saying "Let them eat cake," right? That it's when these nobles just get completely disconnected and completely detached from what it is to be alive in the world at all. That they're just like literally walking around being like, "Oh, these poor people just need to be less poor," while putting golden crowns on their heads and wearing gigantic dresses. Like they're not interested in governing. They're not interested in ruling. So I don't see by what credibility they have to tell us what to do about anything. That if I was living in the United States, the number one thing that I would be focusing on is an independence movement. I would be focusing 100% on having my state declare its independence from this federated system. Because the federated system doesn't exist to govern. Obviously it doesn't. It's not interested in governing. It doesn't give a shit about climate change. It doesn't give a shit about ameliorating homelessness or suffering or any of this. It doesn't give a shit about job creation. It doesn't give a shit about any of that. It's literally a shimmering illusion that just spews lies at you constantly in order to deceive the gullible into participating in a system that only exists to destroy and dominate and control. That's all it does. And there's two sides of that arrangement. You're either the victim or the victimizer. And if that's the arrangement that you are going to live underneath, then stop participating in it. Stop participating in it. To the degree by which you can. Just cease participation. Hey Aga, hey Vince, how you doing, guys? I do get on a roll, eh? Like, I do get on a roll. It's, and sometimes I feel like I'm just kind of saying the same shit over and over and over again, but, like, that's how fucking stupid it's gotten, right? Like, it is the same fucking thing over and over and over again because these guys have completely disconnected from resolving. And what's so frustrating, especially about the climate change conversation, is, like, we have experienced climate, like, environmental change issues before. Throughout the 80s, there was the aerosol story, right? Where we found out that there was a chemical within aerosols, so like hairspray cans and shit like that, that was punching holes in the atmosphere. Straight up. Just like punching holes in the atmosphere with these aerosol cans. So literally, like, friggin' Karens of the world could be like, oh, my hair looks so fabulous today. Oh, my goodness. Punching holes in the motherfucking atmosphere. And what happened is that a group of scientists created a paper and said, hey, we're punching holes in the atmosphere because of aerosol cans, right? A chemical in the aerosol cans are doing that. They put it in front of the federal government, and the federal government went, oh, that's a national security risk. That's a problem. And very quickly they made a law, banned the use of this chemical in aerosol cans, and simply the act of stopping it resolved it, and the earth healed itself, because that's what the earth can do. The earth heals itself. We don't need to do anything. We literally just need to stop doing the thing, right? And so that's literally what would happen if we said, oh, hey, climate change is fucking destroying us because of fossil fuels and polluting. We should stop. And then our regulators would go, oh, yeah, that's true. Here's a series of laws that are very straightforward and easy to understand. And everybody would go, oh, yeah, okay, we'll just stop. And then the earth would heal itself and we would move on. Literally, we could have done that in the 70s. We could have done that in the 70s when ExxonMobil's own scientists, came to them and said, this climate change thing is a serious issue that we need to pay attention to and do something about. If the CEOs and shareholders of ExxonMobil then had have gone, oh, damn, oh, you're right, we should transition to renewables, we should transition away from this fossil fuel thing as quickly as possible, right? If they had made that transition throughout the 70s, 80s, and 90s, we wouldn't even be talking about climate change right now. It wouldn't be an issue. We wouldn't give a fuck at all. But these rapacious nightmare sociopaths and psychopaths instead funded a campaign of denial and delusion in order to deceive actively the populace into believing that their own findings weren't real. These people should go to jail. They should go to jail for the rest of their lives. They should die in prison. We literally shouldn't put an end date on it. We should say, you go to jail now until the day you die. And then when they die, we should throw them into an unmarked grave and bury them and forget about them forever and expunge their name from history completely. That the only way that their legacy will continue on is through legend and song as we sing about the demons we defeated on our quest to actually continue living on God's green earth. So Aga is saying, so what do you think it is now? Is it too many things that need to be done that they feel overwhelmed? I don't think they care. I I think their position is genuinely will be dead before it matters. Like, I'm not saying they're sociopaths to insult them. I'm not saying that they're sociopaths to be hyperbolic or to like ring a fear bell or anything. I think that they are genuinely sociopaths. I think they don't care even about their own children. I think they care about going to Jeffrey Epstein's island, abusing little girls, and spending the rest of their time finding out ways to spread misery on the earth, and that they know that they'll be dead before it affects them at all. I think these people are sociopaths, active sociopaths. I don't think that they're like, they've gotten into a place where they're wrong. I think they've chosen this path. They want to be sociopaths. They don't feel overwhelmed. They feel like things are going exactly as they should. That their job is to hurt people. That's why they should go to jail forever. But the scientists have been saying that since the 70s, yeah. Onward, I fear we've passed several points of no return. I don't know if you've seen or talked about this before, but it's going on right now. I don't buy into this idea of the points of no return, because the earth can heal itself, and it will heal itself. The question is just, how bad do we want to get fucked over, right? How bad do we want to fuck ourselves over, is what you're talking about. But like, we can stop at any moment. We can just stop at any moment. And I keep asking myself, like, where are the generals? Where are the admirals? Where are the military people of conscience to stand up and say that this is a national security risk that needs to be confronted as if it's a war? Where are our military personnel? Like, this is the level of failure that we're talking about, that even our military refuses to protect us. We have been abandoned even by the very people who claim to be there to protect us. Yeah, Mocked, you're saying they are sociopaths because what else could they be? Like, it's incomprehensible. Yeah, like, that. How could you be confronted with this level of truth and still walk away from the table? Like, can it be just delusion? Can people be this deluded? If people can be this deluded, we need to be having major conversations about what our educational systems are for, what our systems of society are for, how they're structured. Because if the outcome is literally that, like, former prime ministers and current prime ministers are this delusional, then we've got to have a big conversation about how our education system works. Because it doesn't, obvious, because it's producing this level of delusion. So, and that's the only other solution, right? That's the only other kind of explanation. That if they're not sociopaths, then they're deluded, right? And neither is good. Like, neither has me sitting here being like, oh, phew, they're only deluded, right? Like, it's either that they're miserable sociopaths who don't even care about their own children and will laugh as they die because they successfully destroyed us on their way to hell, or they're so dopey and deluded that they might as well just be like, I don't even know what, like, is there a character in lore and legend and in fiction that is this detached and stupid? That's this, like, literally they're like Ralph Wiggum level of just like, ha ha, everything's fine, ha ha. Like, these are the people that we've given the society over to. It's just unbelievable. There's no way to properly punish someone who destroyed the earth. Yeah, as George Carlin said, the earth will be fine, the people are effed. Yeah. It's not going to show links, Aga, unfortunately. Okay, so it didn't show the link. It's CTV Montreal, Canada. Health extends deadline of public consultations on higher herbicide concentrations in certain foods. You know, great. Like, fine. Like, super duper. Super duper. We should be incarcerating people. Like, we should be incarcerating people. And I'm not saying this as, like, to be hyperbolic. And I'm not saying this to be like, Extreme. Like after World War II, people got incarcerated. People got hung, right? Yeah, Western militaries have been abandoned. The only reason why people still serve as the military because that's the only job they can actually do due to their injuries. Well, and in America, it's the only way to get a good education, right? It's the only way to actually get health insurance for a lot of people. So there's a reason why the United States doesn't want to actually govern and provide things for its citizens, right? Because it knows that if it actually provides things for its citizens, that they can't force the poor into a war effort to continue destroying the rest of the planet. And themselves, by the way, because the United States military is one of the largest polluters on the planet. Basically, the government allows higher level of glyphosates that doctors say humans should consume already, and now they want to allow an increase. Canadians can call and oppose it. I mean, we should. Here, let's see if we can. Public consultations on higher herbicide concentrations in certain food. Here's the link I'm sure you were going to show me. The extension. And of course, I don't actually expect them. Here you go. To comment on Health Canada's proposal, please click here. Next step, maximum blah, blah, blah. Footnotes. Come on. How to actually comment on this. Appendix 1, next steps. The PRM, yeah. Yeah, we definitely should just keep eating trash, right? We definitely should keep eating poison. That's for sure the best thing to do. We're so fucking dedicated to this idea that, like, we need to, a big problem with all of this, right, is that it's focused simply on, like, the reason why they want to increase things like glyphosates and stuff like this is so that, like, their barley bran and their black-eyed peas can sit in a bin longer, right? Can sit in a bin just longer. And they... And ultimately, they don't give a fuck if people die because of it. They don't give a fuck about that. So written comments of the proposed glyphosate 75 days. Please forward your comment to publications. They really, 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 really do not want us to be fucking doing this. It's really, really obvious that they don't want us to fucking do this. Type of organization. Media. What do you think? Media. Company name. The Canadian Commie. Title position. What's my position, guys? What's my title position? What do you think? What should I put in here? Title position. Dude? The guy? The speaker? Should I be the speaker? I don't know what to call myself. You know what? This isn't important. John Sanderson. Oh, and I don't even need to put any of this in. I literally can just, like, the president. Yeah, right. Oh, I have to do all this. Okay, I'm going to do all of this off screen. I am going to drop this in the chat. Because fuck these guys, right? Like, fuck this. Like, it's so fucking stupid. Like, I feel like you have to actually be, like, thick in the head. At this stage in the game, it's full stop. Anything these fuckers want, the answer is no. Like, the amount of obstruction that they've shown our way, we need to show 3 times the obstruction their way. That we are no longer negotiating with these fucking sociopaths, right? Like, that's the thing that I think that people are not understanding. That this needs to no longer be a negotiation, right? That why are we negotiating for scraps from a group of sociopaths and deluded dunders? That we need to take over everything. We need to get into the halls of power, and when they cry about it, we need to laugh at them. It really does need to work that way. Because if we negotiate with these sociopaths, they're just going to negotiate us into hell, right? Because that's what they want to do. They've given up on a civilized world. They don't give a fuck. Their goal is to destroy the society for their own children. Like, I don't see why we should be listening to these guys anymore. Ugh. Probably a coincidence that an administration who let the eviction moratorium expire has 3 top advisors who are also executives from a company aiming to buy up enough homes to be the biggest landlord in history. A while back, another administration who oversaw the biggest bailout ever while letting regular people wallow in squalor just happened to have a bunch of Goldman Sachs executives in top position. This sort of thing happens all the time. Like, yep. You're living in a satirical society. You're living in a society that is like a made-up joke, right? Like, I imagine that we are living in a society that is being written by somebody who is actually like living a comfortable life in an actual society and is sitting there being like, I need to create like a pretend society that would never exist, that no rational human being would ever tolerate. But I need to create that fictional satirical world for my protagonist to go into so that he can be affronted and confronted. Like Jean-Luc Picard needs to land on a world, and there needs to be a problem on that world that Jean-Luc Picard can like discuss and find a solution to. So I'm going to make this satirical pretend parody world, and here it is, and it's us. It's completely our world, because our world is a total fucking joke. That what we are doing is like, if I'm an alien species looking down on this planet, I'm literally just going to be like, this is a joke, right? Like this is a joke, right? Like they can't seriously be actually doing this. Is this right? Like, is this how they're actually structuring? And it must be getting to the point now where they're like eating popcorn and being like, I can't believe they're doing like we're a comedy show. Like this is a comedy show to these aliens. Like it's so fucking stupid. It's so fucking stupid what we're doing. And the idea that like our leadership is literally standing up and still defending it. Like they sound like cartoon characters. Like a guy like Stephen Harper sounds like a fucking literal cartoon character. Like something from fucking SpongeBob, right? Like, and it or like if you took like Care Bears, right? Well, what would the Care Bear villains actually sound like? They would sound like fucking Stephen Harper. Because it's too cartoonish and stupid to be believed. Like, how can you possibly, like, be standing in the middle of a forest and genuinely tell me that there's no forest? Like, what the fuck is actually happening here? I watched a doc showing both sides of this issue, and the poor farmer from Manitoba was literally saying, well, do you want cheap food or, stammer, us to use the herbicide? Thanks for sharing this link. The chemical Roundup may be linked to cancer and environmental harm. Yeah, we know that. Hey, Dave, how you doing, bud? Haven't seen you in here for a while. I don't think they're eating snacks and laughing. There's a long list of interventions in the capitalist military machines by unknown visits. Yeah, that's a very curious. Let's derail this a little bit. I've been railing on the climate thing for a while. Let's talk about the aliens. Gonna throw a ball first. Sorry guys if that squeaked in your ears. You wanna go get it, buddy? Go get it. Go get it. And then he saunters over to it, little guy. Well, go get it. Don't look at me. Go get it. This guy, I tell you what. I think that the only thing that those aliens are doing is they're seeing if we are going to shoot at them. I think that that's what that is. If it is aliens, but like let's pretend as though it is. They for sure are just showing up and wagging their dick in front of the American military to be like, are these guys just going to open fire on us? Like if we literally are going to like show up, are these guys just going to nuke us the second we try to engage with these guys? So I think that what they're doing is a form of communication, and it's a form of communication just being like, hey, we're here, are you going to shoot us? And it's the reason why all of the sightings are being seen in America, right? Because the aliens, they know that the Americans are the Nazis on the world stage right now. They know. They're very aware of that. You'd have to be a dunder to think otherwise. And they're just showing up and showing in front of military vehicles and being like, you going to shoot me? What are you going to do? Right? And so far, the Americans, for all we know, I don't know, maybe we have opened fire on these guys in the past, right? And maybe we are opening fire on them. We're just not talking about it, right? And so so we'll see how that all unfolds. For all we know, it's just like glimmers and bullshit, right? Like it's just nothing. Onward to dystopia. CDC said 7-day average of daily U.S. COVID cases surpassed peak seen last summer. Okay, this is a great time. This is a great opportunity to hear. This is Hassanabi. His reporting on this is really, really strong. And so I think that now is a good time for us to actually hear from somebody who's really put something together on this. So I'm going to cede a lot of time to this.
Bro, is this for real? Is this what Lollapalooza looks like right now? There's no shot this is real. Dude, what are people doing, dude? I've been there before and it's been this packed, but holy it's a pandemic. Calm down, people. And then there's this. Louisiana is a 7-day rolling average of new cases in Louisiana. And fucking shit's popping off, dude. I feel like conservatives look at something.
Collectives on Stack Overflow helps you unlock the power of your community. You can reach and engage millions of developers on Stack Overflow and connect with those interested in your technology. Share knowledge and support users of your products, and drive growth through actionable data and insights. Visit collectivesonstackoverflow.com today.
What's up, Tim Sykes, millionaire mentor and trader, here with $10,000. A lot of you think you need $10,000 to get started in the stock market.
Fuck you,
That's
capitalism.
nonsense! That's ridiculous!
Fuck you, capitalism.
Don't need that much
Get fucked,
to really
capitalism.
make it in the stock
Go
market.
fuck yourself.
Like this, and they go, fuck, man, COVID was doing so good. And then, there was all these like vaccinations that were happening. And like, that was a big setback for COVID. I think we got to pump those numbers up. And luckily they did. Republicans look at this as like a sign of progress. They're like, that means it's the freedom chart, brother. That's the goddamn freedom chart, brother. Now, I've said this already. I'm a firm believer in vaccine mandate, vaccine passports, and I'm going to use France as an example. France is now officially requiring
frustration
proof.
with those who are unvaccinated on full display. The clashes and protests in France. The country now requiring vaccination passports for restaurants, bars, museums, theaters. And French President Emmanuel Macron saying to those who refuse to be vaccinated, it's time you stay at home, not us. Here's our senior foreign correspondent, Ian Pannell, tonight.
So, of course, this is how the French reacted to this. But, hey, you want to know what was the positive part of this, dude? France's vaccine signups in the 24-hour period immediately after was insane. Macron gave a warning originally back in July 13th, and 1 million people signed up to make vaccine appointments. And then as of yesterday, I think what was it like? The vaccination appointments fucking skyrocketed. Oh, here was the article I was looking for. 3 million people have booked vaccinations in France as Macron announces COVID restrictions. France doesn't get a lot of things right, but this is one of those things where they did get right. Biden's family has moved towards a vaccine mandate for federal. Biden finally has moved towards. Yeah, I know that they're doing federal vaccine mandates, which is good. I think it's fucking ridiculous that it's so incomprehensible to advocate for such a good policy, but it's not very surprising because America. Okay, there's a new CDC document that warns Delta variant spreads like chickenpox.
Critical new information about the Delta variant of the coronavirus. The paper has obtained an internal CDC document which contains urgent new warnings about the virus. The Post reports, quote, the Delta variant of the coronavirus appears to cause more severe illness than earlier variants and spreads as easily as chickenpox, according to the internal federal health document that also argues officials must acknowledge the war has changed. The Post goes on to report, quote, it cites a combination of recently obtained, still unpublished data from outbreak investigations and outside studies showing that vaccinated individuals infected with Delta may be able to transmit the virus as easily as those who are unvaccinated. Vaccinated people infected with Delta have measurable viral loads similar to those who are unvaccinated and infected with the variant.
Every federal government employee will be asked to attest to their vaccination status. Anyone who does not attest or is not vaccinated will be required to mask no matter where they work, test 1 or 2 times a week. If in fact you're unvaccinated, you present a problem.
Like, it's unbelievable to me that there are still people standing up in this conversation and being like, but my civil rights. Like, it's so, but my freedom. They're not even saying but my civil rights. They're saying, but my freedom, but my freedom. It's this completely disconnected, disassociated, like, and it really, really speaks to like why it is dangerous to continuously tell your population that like, oh no, you're individuals who just need to individualize your individualization, right? That because there are crises that affect a people that need to be responded to collectively. And if you don't have built into your ethos or your mode of thinking or the idea that you have in your society that you actually are in this together, right? That is actually the case, that you all are in this together. If you don't actually have that built in already, so people know when to defer or when to move or when to mobilize or when to go in whatever direction they need to go collectively as a people, if that's not built in, then you just end up with these fucking dumbass dummies standing around being like, I'm not going to get the jab because it's government trying to put Bill Gates nanobots inside my blood. And if the Bill Gates puts the nanobots inside my blood, then they'll know that I'm going down to Jeb's barbecue this afternoon. Like, what the fuck? Like, what the fuck do you even care? It's so fucking delusional. Andrew, back again, delivering pizza and watching you. Well, that's that's nice, Andrew. I'll take that, dude. I don't know why that's so funny to me, Andrew. I don't know why that's so funny to me that you're going around delivering pizza, and you got me like on a podcast kind of way, listening into what I have to say. I don't know why that gets me, dude, but that gets me. I love it. I love it so much. I think it's just because, like, I always imagine you guys are, like, sitting in, like, your apartment or something, like, and you're, like, watching something else or playing a video game or something, and you're, like, listening to me. But the idea that you're, like, bringing me into the real world, I guess, I think that's the most surreal part about doing this, is when it loops back around on me. And it does happen every so often that, like, places where I post things or places where things happen or places where I go, suddenly there's a video of mine. And I'm like, oh, I didn't put that here. It just came here. It just manifested itself mystically and magically somehow. And so the idea that, like, I'm actually real, you know, it really gets me. So I hope you're having a good time today delivering those pizzas, Andrew. All we have is consumerism. If you take that away, people lose their shit. Yeah, and that's right. And that's well cultivated. That that consumerism has arisen in response to capitalism exhausting us. That capitalism exhausts us and gives us such a small, brief, fractional amount of our time to be able to distract ourselves from the kind of capitalist catastrophe that we're all experiencing together, that to supplant genuine exploration or interests or existential exploration of any sort, we need to replace it with stupid toys and dumb baubles and ridiculous television shows and propaganda that designed to look like entertainment, so that when you crash on your couch after getting your ass kicked for 8 hours of work plus 2 hours of commuting. You can turn on the TV for, 30 minutes to an hour and watch something charming and harmless, so that you can shut your mind down for just a brief moment and escape the kind of hellscape that you live in and eat your stupid fucking TV dinner, where you gotta throw that in the trash can and then go to fucking sleep so you can do it all over again, right? Like and that's the best capitalism has for you. That's the best it can do, is it can provide a stupid little consumerist experience in an attempt to distract you from the unending hellscape of this ridiculous capitalist system that ultimately is structured to destroy you, right? Like, that's the thing they'll never be able to get away with. Get away from, is that the system is structured to destroy itself and you and every future generation. Like, what the fuck are we even thinking participating in this? Like, literally, what the fuck are we thinking? We're no different than, like, stormtroopers on on a fucking Star Destroyer, right? We're going around and destroying planets. It just turns out we're going to start with ours first. Dave, the U.S. has been asked repeatedly to open source the vaccine and refuses to do so. 6 different leaders, including Trudeau, have begged the U.S. to do the right thing. Until they're willing to drop the IP profit motive, like all other successful vaccines, I do not trust it. Well, and honestly, Dave, like, what they're doing, and I actually think we're getting to a point where we can say that this is being consciously done. They're not interested in eradicating this disease. They're not interested in eradicating COVID. They want COVID to mutate. They want COVID to stick around. They want it to continue being here, because as long as it's continually here, they can continuously sell the cure, right? So they don't need to eradicate it or eliminate it. They're not going to suddenly give cures to India or Africa or South America or any of these places, which historically they haven't given a fuck about at all, right? They're not going to suddenly provide vaccines for these people. They're not suddenly going to help them out, because they can sell their vaccine to the wealthy nations perpetually. They don't give a fuck if a bunch of Africans or Indians or South Americans die of these diseases. And they don't give a fuck if a bunch of Americans and Europeans die either. All they care about is money for themselves. That's all they care about, because, as we've stated repeatedly, these people are fucking sociopaths who don't even care about their own children, right? So they're going to allow this disease to continue going throughout these places and kill a bunch of people. And if they mutate, well, then they'll just make a new vaccine and then have us scramble in this again. They don't give a fuck about capitalism. They don't give a fuck. They don't care, right? They care about money for themselves. Full stop. Full stop. They have no other give a shit care at all. And they'll tell you. They'll say it to your face. This is the most mind-blowing part about it, of the whole thing, is that they literally will have an interview and say right to your face that, no, I'm only interested in money for myself. Just start believing them. Just start believing them. Ugh. I've become like a radio DJ. I need to get like a horn. I'm sorry, the Max. I'm reading your thing. I was heading back home from work. Like, hey, here with John and the Bob. Hey, Bob, what do you think? Need to add in like, it's Milo and the J here on JON Radio. All John, all the time. Hey, Matthias, how you doing, bud? Consumerism is due to our environmental influences. You shit can the PSYOP advertising industry, and this entire Ponzi scheme would collapse in weeks. Honestly, dude, I think the entire thing collapses if you provide citizens with food and shelter, and they literally no longer they just stop participating in this stupid capitalist system that destroys itself and destroys everything around it, then people are going to like start to think like, oh, like here's something that's genuinely happening to me. Like, I play video games, right? But it's getting harder and harder for me to find any kind of satisfaction in video games any longer, because video games really only work as a distractionary method for the most part, right? They're not really there to help me grow or to help me learn anything or to help me figure anything out. And because I'm not exhausted by getting my ass kicked by a capitalist system currently, I'm sure I'm going to have to go back soon. Unless this channel starts paying out, and that's you guys. That's on you guys. So start paying out. I'm fucking with you. I hate doing that shit, dude. I hate that I have to fucking engage in that capitalist bullshit. But if we were all left to our own devices and things kind of calmed down and we stopped exhausting ourselves in this manic capitalist nightmare, our entertainment systems and the way that we interact in entertainment would shift dramatically, because we wouldn't be focused so much on mere distraction, that we would be interested in actually creating and exploring ideas and something like this. And I think video games can be useful for that. And I'm not saying that there aren't video games that have done something like this, but just like I think that the vast majority of our culture has been created in the same kind of equivalency as dangling keys. Like I genuinely think that that's the case, that we really are like just seeking distraction in like a dangling key kind of a way. And if we were actually not so fucking exhausted, we would see that for what it is, right? That we're willing to accept the dangling keys because we're so fucking overwhelmed and exhausted, and that in many ways we welcome such simple distractions, right? But if we actually like had time and actually let our minds calm down, actually just were able to spend time looking at the clouds, smelling flowers, gardening, doing yoga, meditating, doing calm sort of pursuits, just washing your dishes, right? These sorts of things. Then the dangling key entertainment system that exists today, you would see it in that way. You would be like, well, this is just kind of baby stuff. This is just dangling key shit. Like, I'm more like, why can't I do like a genuine exploration of what it is to be a human being? But we're not generating that kind of thing because no one would actually watch that now, because our lives are so exhausting as it is, that to actually spend time on media that is meaningful would also be exhausting. I really noticed this with Breaking Bad, that I found that when I was working in the capitalist system, that I couldn't actually watch a show like Breaking Bad because it was too much. It was too hard. It was too difficult. It was telling too many truths in too effective a manner. And so I couldn't engage with it. And it really took being separated from the capitalist system and to find the energy to actually come to the end of that story and to actually participate in it. Brilliant piece of work, by the way. Brilliant piece of work. Like, Breaking Bad is like, especially within the conversation of like health insurance and healthcare, like, we absolutely should be still paying attention to Breaking Bad, because it deals with the illegitimacy of the drug war. It deals with the illegitimacy of the private healthcare system. It deals with the illegitimacy of our treatment of our education professionals. Like, it's just like a perfectly told story that intersects all of these major failings in American culture, perfectly articulated in the figure of Walter White. And so if you've never actually watched Breaking Bad, I highly encourage it. But if you can't watch Breaking Bad because it's too much, I completely get where you're coming from. So our education system and our advertising industry and all this kind of stuff, it would just cease to exist because we would see it for what it is, which is just dangling key distractionary bullshit. And if you're engaging in that and you feel you have to engage in that, all power to you, and my heart goes out to you, because because sometimes that's what you need. Really, like sometimes that's what it is. Like sometimes you're so fucking overwhelmed and exhausted that you need a pint of ice cream, right? I'm not gonna fucking scoff at anybody for doing that, but it is what it is. And if everybody had their time back and wasn't so fucking blisteringly exhausted all the time, our advertising and education and entertainment system would cease to exist as it does today. 99% of video games do nothing but reinforce our current societal structure. I would say that's probably true of most media, I think. Like the Avengers. You guys have heard me go off about the Avengers. Like the Avengers is straight up, like it's perfect fascist propaganda. It's perfect fascist propaganda. If you were commissioned to make more effective fascist propaganda, I don't think you actually could. It's perfect in its articulation of the ideology of fascism, and it encourages the viewer to engage in the idea that the fascists you are rooting for are somehow good, and that the ideals that they fight for are ideals that we should actually be striving for as a society. When you actually dissect them, you realize pretty quickly, oh, these guys are just fucking fascists. Like, they're fucking unbelievable fascists who are only justified within the context of the Marvel universe because there are aliens invading and, like, demons from other dimensions and shit like this. But, like, if you actually were to try to justify the Avengers in the real world where we all live, they would be fascist overlords. Period. Like, that would be it. That would be it. And the dumb idea that, oh, they have the Civil War where they, like, actually let the government, let a governmental system, take over and regulate them and all that kind of stuff. Well, all the governments of the Marvel world are fascist. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, they all espouse a doctrine that we can invade whoever we want at any time, and that's fully justified because we're powerful and you're not. And they're whenever they're confronted with any kind of idea of how to be in the world, the best they can come up with are idiotic, small-minded slogans. Like, and the best slogans happened in the early days, like with great power comes great responsibility. And of course, if you're an American hearing that, well, the responsibility is to be the owners of the entire planet and to destroy the bad guys, right? The bad guys being, the people who live in the places you're dominating. And so this like Marvel Avengers key dangling shit completely reinforces the current societal structure, which, hey, hate to break it to you guys, is fascism. And the only one you can think that doesn't do that is Minecraft. I think that's good. Like, that's Minecraft is a good point, that it doesn't really have an ethos. It literally is just like, you're in the jungle, build whatever. And be as creative as you want and build whatever you'd like to build. And, like, at least in Minecraft you're building, right? We don't build. We haven't built a thing in, like, 40 years. We don't build shit. What was the last thing we built? Like, we didn't build anything. So at least Minecraft is teaching you to build something. As an empath, I cannot watch TV at all. The manipulation in all media is real. Absolutely it is. Like, I've been watching, just as a stupid on the side kind of thing, I've been watching Parks and Recreation. But Parks and Recreation is also, like, a form of propaganda. Like Brooklyn Nine-Nine, right? Brooklyn Nine-Nine is absolutely propaganda for cops. It's cop propaganda, without a doubt. Because both of these shows really deflect major corruption and systemic issues into a individualism sort of place. And they take the figures who should be repugnant in our view. Like, a guy like Ron Swanson, a libertarian, right? A guy like Ron Swanson, who is this like anti-government libertarian, is repugnant, and yet we are presented with him as if he's this like man's man, and he's really charming, and we actually really like him in the end. But like, if those are the people who are legitimately in government, then we should have serious conversations about how repugnant they are. But we don't. We don't. We just sort of shrug and go like, oh, that's Ron, right? And like lots of TV is that way. Oh, your Breaking Bad is my Handmaid's Tale. Handmaid's Tale is exactly the same story for me. I've been avoiding it because I know it's going to hurt me. Like there's some media that like, there's some stuff that when it gets made, I look at it and I go, that's going to mark me. That's going to cause a problem. And I see that with The Handmaid's Tale. And I just know that, what's her name? The author, Margaret, I want to say Margaret Thatcher, but that's definitely wrong. But I just know that she's got a dagger, and every like chapter is just gonna like, Arr, and every episode is just gonna, Arr, and I just don't. I should run up on it though. I should do it. Because I mean, it seems like it's so well done. It seems like it's so good that I think I owe it to myself. What you were describing is what Gramsci referred to as cultural hegemony. Yeah, the cultural institutions that legitimize the structure of the system. Yeah, and because we have billionaires, like the culture seeks to justify the structure of the system because that's how you get money, right? Like that's how you get ahead. That if you want to make something that's critical of that system, you just aren't going to get funded for that. And things do slip through, but they slip through in kind of the cracks, right? That like something like Joker, for example. Joker is an indictment of the culture. It absolutely is an indictment of the culture, but it slides through because the concept of an origin story of the Joker is actually quite fascinating. And then you've got Joaquin Phoenix attached to the project, and he's obviously put the work in. Like, you just need to look at him in that movie to know that he's put the work in, right? That his physicality of the Joker is so intense that you know he's done a good job even before the film starts. And through this sort of vessel of this character of the Joker, who is intriguing to us as a figure and who we know kind of has this like legendary status in our media as a figure, to see an origin story of his told that makes us sympathetic to his plight through his wholesale abandonment by... We're back. We're back. Am I back? Are we good? Are we good? Are we good? Are we good? Somebody say something to me. Are we good? Are you seeing me? Yes, no. Am I here? Okay, great. Thanks, Dave. Well, I mean, the George Floyd riots, right? Like, Ega is saying, I really thought that after Joker came out, the U.S. is going to erupt in riots. Like, the George Floyd riots. Like, the media has done a very bad job of actually talking about how destructive those riots actually were, right? Like, those riots were and I am not one of these guys that talks about the George Floyd riots as if they were like, oh, it's just a protest movement and the rioting was over off on the side. No. There was legitimate rioting that was happening at that time. The thing is that I don't seek to be I don't seek to be like, oh, sure, there were riots, but you know, the thrust of the movement was like, no, fuck around and find out, right? Fuck around and find out. Murder people on the streets and your shit gets burnt down, and that's fine, right? And people coming at me being like, oh, oh, the destruction of private property is always bad. I'm like, no, it isn't. Go fuck yourself. Go fuck yourself. Fuck around and find out. It really is that simple. Fuck around and find out. Like, if you go and destroy shit and the police get you, you're going to pay for it. There's going to be consequences. Absolutely. But there's plenty of people in this plane of reality that see those consequences as worthwhile because they're living in a fascist hellscape that has been taken over by these fucking fascists who are doing everything they can to destroy us. And what? You're whinging because some windows get broke and some people steal some shit? Then maybe make your society better. Then maybe not a fascist system that's actively attempting to destroy itself, right? Yeah, and so Joker ends up sort of sliding through. Parasite had a similar sort of thing. Parasite sort of slides on through because it's this director who's done several kind of high-profile stuff, and then he makes this story that seems to just be about families, right? But then ends up being a high-level critique of the capitalist system. And I genuinely think that the people who are funding him didn't even see that was the case. Like, these guys are stupid, right? That's something to always remember. These capitalists are very stupid. They genuinely only care about money for themselves. And so something like Parasite, I can really see them watching and be like, okay, I don't really get it, but okay. And like, that's it. You know what's funny? I have not read Chris Hedges' new book, America: The Farewell Tour. It's the one piece of work I haven't actually read of his, and I should get a hold of it. The thing is that with Chris Hedges is that I feel like I listen to him so often that, and I read a lot of his articles and essays, and I've read every other book that he's done, that I feel like America: The Farewell Tour, I'm going to be like, yep, that's Chris. Like, that's Hedges, man. That's Hedges. But you're right. I should. I got a lot of books going on the back burner right now, and maybe I should prioritize that. Yeah, Parasite was great. But outside of like Joker and Parasite, like, is there another piece of media that is actually like an indictment of the capitalist system? Is there another piece of media? So like, sure, things slip through, but I don't see much in our culture. I don't see much in our culture that really is interested in standing up and being critical of the culture in serious ways. And I think that is because that if you wanted to create something that was genuinely critical of the culture in a serious way, on the face of it, without being subtle, right? Well, you're not going to get funded. You're just not going to get funded. And and we've seen that there have been shows that have started and they've just kind of been about the character, and then steadily they started to take a more anti-capitalist stance and started to tell stories that were explicitly anti-capitalist, and then they disappear. BoJack Horseman is exactly that story. That BoJack Horseman was a very popular show on Netflix, a show that I actually found a great deal of power in, and a great deal of courage in the storytelling in BoJack Horseman, and its ratings were high. People were liking it. People were asking for a new season, and Netflix killed it. And the creator himself said that the only reason he could come up with for why that would be the case is because of the anti-capitalist sentiment in the final season. And so, like, even if you're a well-established show, right? Even if you're a well-established show on a ostensibly independent network, if you turn and start taking an anti-capitalist stance, you're going to be defunded and you're going to be kicked off the platform, which is exactly what happened to that guy. I mean, yeah, Dave, he is dead on. Like, he's speaking the truth. He's speaking the truth. That if it isn't the truth, he wouldn't say it. Like, it really is, and he's coming from such a place of personal power, and his lived experiences are so powerful, and his ability to articulate the reality of American life is a gift. It really is truly a gift. That in many ways he is if I were to put it in theological terms, and I will because he is a theologian, he is a prophet. Like, there's just no other word to use. Like, you could call him an intellectual if you wanted to, but no, he is a prophet. He's a modern day prophet, and any book that he recommends reading, you should pick up, for sure. Lynn Din's Postcards from the End of America was one of the best straight, no-chaser accounts of being poor in America I've read. Okay, hot tips. And of course, Abby Martin. Dave literally just says Abby Martin, and I'm like, okay, Abby Martin is absolutely one of the best journalists that exists today, not only because of her sharp intelligence, not only because of her strong analysis, but because she is a total babe, right? Like, I'm so sorry for the women in the chat. I am, because I say it every time about Abby Martin, but I have such... I'm so in love with Abby Martin. Like, I'm so just like she... And like, she speaks with like this like deep kind of voice that she has. And I just... Like, it infuriates me that she's married and has children. I'm just like, because I'm in love with you, Abby Martin. And I would love for nothing but good things to happen to you. Not almost as hot as young Stalin. Yeah, let's go. Young Stalin. Absolutely. Look at this guy. What a babe, eh? Look at this guy. You're telling me that you wouldn't swoon. Look at this, what somebody's done. If you're just listening in, it's the face of Stalin on like a hard-bodied dude, but he's all tattooed up with like the hammer and sickle and like CCCP on his abs. He's got Lenin on his thighs and like shit like this. Somebody's done a nice colorized version of this. Like, young Stalin, what a handsome young man. What a handsome young man. No wonder he became the leader of that country. Look at this guy. And then he grows like the mustache, and he becomes like Wyatt Earp. This is something that I keep talking about Joseph Stalin, is that if they took Joseph Stalin and they put him in like a sci-fi television show, like Firefly, right? Where he's on like some dusty world, right? Like, and he's fighting against like an entrenched monarchy, right? If they told Joseph Stalin's story from that kind of perspective, completely detached from all of the like iconography and like the Russianness and any of that kind of stuff, and they just took his story and told it, I think he would be the most popular figure in American television. His story is so fascinating and so interesting, and he is such a powerful figure, and such a strong force for freedom from this absurd Tsarist structure, and then actually kept telling the story about his ascension to rule, and like kept telling his story through time. If you did like a multi-season series of the life of Joseph Stalin, but told with this like sci-fi veneer, I think it would be one of the most popular shows in America. I think people would go crazy for it, because he is essentially like a Wyatt Earp level kind of gunslinger type who rose up in a revolution with his comrades and took over, and then ascended to governance, and then dies in office. Like, this, what an incredible story. Like, what an incredible story that Joseph Stalin has. And if somebody took that story and set it on, like, the planet Uskabar or something, Like, it would be incredibly popular. It would be incredibly popular. You should watch her speech that she gave at Jacques Fresco's 100th birthday celebration. How long is the speech? Abby Martin at Jacques Fresco's 100th birthday celebration. Oh, it's like 17 minutes. No, that's too long, dude. That's too long. I'm not gonna do that.
Abby Martin is an internationally known journalist who hosted the No Holds Barred Breaking
the Set. My new show on Telesur is a little different. It's a little bit less energy.
Okay. I just wanted to play it just to hear her voice. That's all. Okay. I love her jacket. Oh no, why would this offend Abby? And if can you imagine if Abby Martin and Joseph Stalin had a baby? What a beautiful baby that would be. What a tall, dark, and mysterious baby. Right? Like look at this. I'll leave it up, bud. I'll watch it after this. I believe you. No, Abby Martin is brilliant. Like, she's a genius. And her, she's so courageous. Like, Abby Martin is courageous. She is as courageous as, I don't know, as anybody. As any other courageous person that you can even think of. Like, if somebody were to make a movie about the life of Abby Martin, you'd be like, what the fuck? Like, it's incredible what she's doing. It's incredible the positions that she's taken. I think that you can credit Abby Martin directly for how the culture has shifted its positions on issues like South America, but the Israeli issue, like the Israeli occupation of Palestine. I think that you can credit Abby Martin directly for the consciousness shift that has happened throughout America because of her work, such as Gaza Fights for Freedom, which I've played on this channel, because it's so powerful. Like, anytime I encounter anybody who is... have a good one, Dave. Thanks for popping in, bud. Good to see you. Anytime I encounter anybody who is still on this sort of mistaken idea that the Palestinians are the ones that are attacking the Israelis, I'm just like, nope, we're watching Gaza Fights for Freedom. You just gotta watch. And literally in the first, 15 minutes, it becomes extremely obvious that, this person, literally, you can see it happen, where they're just like, oh shit, I did not understand what was happening over there. And, it doesn't take very long, right? It doesn't take very long for them to just be like, oh, fuck, these... And then you start getting into the documents. And then she spends the last half of the movie talking about the peaceful protest and how these people were getting sniped amidst a peaceful protest. And, that's when it shifts from, this is not, a cultural negotiation. This is a fucking genocide. That cannot be defended, right? And the people who are defending Israel, people like former Prime Minister Stephen Harper in his most recent interview, the people who are still defending Israel are as bad as the Nazis. You are defending a genocide. You are fighting in favor of a genocide. And Abby Martin's Gaza Fights for Freedom is essentially all you need to see. If you can't rebut it, if you can't put up something to refute it, which you can't, then you have to accept the truth of what's happening in Israel, which is that Israel works with the United States to ethnically cleanse Israel for the Israeli people so that the United States can have a military base in the region, right? A nuclear military base in that region. That's what it's there for. And it doesn't take a genius to figure this out. We've been so bombarded with this narrative that it's a both sides issue that we believe it. Lesser Holocaust. Well, and depending on where it goes to, right? Like if we Greater Israel Project, like this is not secret. Like they're very upfront about what the plan is for Israel, right? It's like the Greater Israel Project is to take this region that they have shattered and destroyed and take over. Like they want to take over Syria, they want to take over big sections of Iraq, they want to take over northern Saudi Arabia. They very much want to take over this section of Egypt, the section of Egypt that has the Nile and the Suez Canal, right? Like that's what they want to take over, so that they can have essentially another American state in this region that is allied to America. Yeah, and if they help the poor, they lose their power. Yeah. Like this and this project's not going to work. Like this is the thing that I just think that America doesn't really quite understand, is that like these sorts of projects don't work because you're always going to have a persistent and constant thrum of like an undercurrent that's always seeking to dismantle and overthrow this, right? But they're looking at what they're doing in Israel and in the Middle East the same way they viewed the eradication of the First Nations people, right? That they were relatively successful at eradicating the First Nations people. And so why shouldn't we be just as successful eradicating the Islamic people, right? We can ethnically cleanse people. We've done it before. Right? We did it with the First Nations people. We did it with the Aztecs and the Mayans and the Incans, right? We completely cleansed the society of those civilizations. We can do the same here, right? And now we have nuclear bombs. Of course we can do the same thing, right? Like we, and the idea that we're somehow like distorted or something, we are absolutely operating in the exact same way that we always have. Google Maps. Should China be worried about the Philippines and Vietnamese joining with America? I don't think the Vietnamese. I actually think everything that I've read, and I can change my mind on this in a dime. Like if somebody shows me a source, shows me a document that isn't directly funded by the CIA or Adrian Zenz, I can absolutely change my tune. But everything I've seen about Vietnam tells me the opposite. I think that Vietnam. Like, why would Vietnam join with America? Like, it wasn't that long ago that Vietnam was having to recover from, like, a 10-year campaign of bombing where they were bombed so thoroughly that the Americans just grounded their bombers because they had nothing left to bomb. That Vietnam was completely obliterated to the ground by the Americans. I find it very, very unlikely that Vietnam is going to join forces with the Americans. If anything, they'll join forces with China. That and the Vietnamese government is in conversation with China about the possibility of joining China and allowing China to be the federated body, right? And my question is like, why would Vietnam join America? Of course, if they did, that would be devastating. But the Philippines is a different story, right? The Philippines is sort of goes one way and then goes the other. That's whenever I read about the Philippines, I'm seeing and anytime I see the Philippines, like I feel like they want both. They want they would prefer there be no war, and I think the Philippines, like, they're willing to accept America to a degree, but they also want to accept China, and so I feel like they're caught between. And if war were to break out between them, hard to say which way the Philippines would jump. I feel like the Philippines would jump towards China just because China is the like geographic power, right? Whereas America is having to like come across the ocean and to do shit. Well, Japan is a different story, right? Like Japan, after World War II, Japan essentially had to bend the knee to America. That they aren't allowed to have a standing military. two of their cities got nuked. Like they had to like Japan was a completely different nation after World War II. It was completely reshaped because of not only its military destruction, but also its cultural destruction. Its culture got destroyed as part of a deal, like as part of the actual deal of moving forward. And so Japan's allegiance to America has always been this post-World War II deal. But also remember that China and Japan are like centuries old enemies. Yeah, exactly, Dave. China and Japan are historical enemies that long before World War II. Exactly. So the idea that China and Japan would bro up and join forces, very, very unlikely. There's a big grudge there. There's a lot of mistrust and a big, big grudge. Something quite serious would have to happen before those two decided to kind of bro down. It would be very, very serious. It would have to be some kind of very overwhelming, like the Americans would literally have to start threatening to destroy Japan, and maybe actively would be destroying Japan. And then China would be like, it is in our interest to come to the defense of Japan, and then China would defend Japan, and then they would win, and then Japan would be like, thank you, China, for coming to our defense. It would have to be that kind of scale for Japan and China to actually become allies of any sort. Like they're very suspicious of one another, and that suspicion is entrenched in a long and bloody history, typically coming from Japan. The U.S. global hegemony will not last the next decade. I think that's probably right. They're bankrupt. Their dollar is worthless. Yeah, I think that's right. China's RMB will be the next reserve currency because it's backed in gold, not oil. Well, I don't think it matters less to me because it's backed in gold, not oil. I think it's going to be the next reserve currency simply because it's stable, right? Simply because the country itself is stable. Like if America suddenly said like our currency will not be backed in oil, it'll be backed by gold or silver or whatever. Pick whatever rock or whatever commodity you like. It'll be backed by bath salts or whatever. Like who gives a fuck? But the reality is that the United States is unstable, right? It's not stable, and that instability by itself, like. People need to remember, man, so much of this currency stuff is really based on rich people feelings. Like the economists like to say like it's all, it's a science and it's all hardlined and here's the math and all of this. But a lot of it really is just like, I am a rich person and I feel this way, therefore this is how it is. Right? And that's how currency works. That it and as the Americans show more and more on the world stage that they're not to be trusted, that they're unstable, that they are destroying way more than they're building, and the things that they're building are just more ways to destroy, people are going to be looking around, okay, who's stable? Who's stable? China's stable, dude. China's stable. Like, anytime I read a critique coming out of the West about China, it sounds childish. It sounds super, super childish, with exceptions. I think the Australians... The critiques that are coming out of Australia surrounding China are accurate and very prescient because they're caught in a real tough position. The Australians are, because their historical ally has been the United States, but now Australia's number one trading partner is China, as well as their geographical ally, right? They're closer to China than they are to the United States. And so it makes sense that they would want to ally up with China. But culturally and historically, they are closer to the United States. So if war were to break out between these two, Australia is sitting in a position where it needs to decide. It needs to decide. And the United States isn't going to just let Australia keep trading with China as it attempts to inflict a war on it, right? Like, it's going to make Australia choose. And it's very explicit when, like, The people they send over to talk to the Australians, they're very explicit. They're very much like, we are not going to let you be neutral. We're not going to let you keep trading with the Chinese. And we're not going to let you side with the Chinese. Like, you're not going to side with the Chinese and then walk away from that and be happy about it. Like, it's not going to happen. But really, I think it just comes down to stability, right? And China is stable and the United States is not. And as that becomes more and more obvious and apparent, the rest of the world is going to lean towards China. And that lean towards China itself is going to devalue the United States currency and its dollar, which will have an unfolding effect, right? Like, it's amazing how much of all of this is smoke and mirrors, right? That like, dollar, like, money's not real. Like, it's not a real thing. It doesn't exist in any meaningful way. It can be dismantled, it can be erected based on the will and imagination of the people using it. And and as people lose faith in the American dollar and begin to pick up on the RMB, which is a currency built by Russia and China together, they're going to lean that way because these places are stable and the United States is not. Onward, since 1964, more than 50,000 Lao have been killed or injured by U.S. bombs. Yeah. An estimated 30% of bombs dropped on Laos failed to explode in the years since the bombing ended. Yet 20,000 people have been killed or maimed by the estimated 80 million bombs left behind. Yeah. Really, really tough to, like, be pro-American under those circumstances, right? Like, that is an absolute horrific thing to hear. And Cambodia was caught up in that. Thailand, like, this whole section, this whole fucking region, unbelievable what they did. Unbelievable what they did. The Philippine Republic was from the Spanish-American War until post-World War II, a colony of the United States. Yep, and it has a complicated history. The Philippines does, and so. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't want to search it up right now, but if I'm not mistaken, I believe that the United States does have a military base here, or at least what they call a lily pad. Does USA make money off the Cuban embargo? No. That's what's so fucking fucked up about the Cuban embargo, right? Literally the only rationale for having the Cuban embargo is to crush a successful communist model. That's it. Right? And the reality is if they could do to China what they're doing to Cuba, they would. Right? They're attempting to. Right? They're attempting to. It's just that, you know, China is much bigger than they are. And Cuba is just like a little tiny fish. And so they're absolutely just trying to squeeze the life out of Cuba simply because Cuba has an alternative, functioning, superior model than the failed system of capitalism that exists throughout the United States. And and so they need to squeeze it. They can't let this, like, what would happen if suddenly the Haitians started to say, hey, this Cuban model's looking pretty good. Why don't we just adopt that? Right? It's an existent model that we can adopt. Just take it and do it. What would happen if the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico started to do that? Oh my God, what if Colombia, Venezuela, oh my God, and then it starts to spread, and suddenly Brazil, and now this whole fucking place. This is the rationale behind the destruction of Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos. Right? This is the rationale for that ridiculous, absurd, evil bombing campaign. We have documents showing, we have recordings of Richard Nixon being talked down by Henry Kissinger, of all people, talking Richard Nixon down from dropping nuclear bombs on Vietnam. Right? Really think about the madness. Really think about the psychopathic insanity of a person like Richard Nixon, who needs to be talked down by fucking Henry Kissinger from dropping nuclear bombs on people whose only crime is that they want to rule themselves with a different operating system than the white imperialist capitalism. Like, this is the psychotic nature of capital. that they literally are like, it would be acceptable to drop nuclear bombs because they're not capitalists. Like, fuck. Like, that's some Nazi level shit. Like, that's some Nazi level shit right there. Like, that's the kind of shit you expect to hear from, like, Nazi Germany. Like, that's the kind of shit you expect to hear from Nazi Germany. You don't expect to hear fucking a United States president in the White House talking to his, like, evil psychotic advisor, Henry Kissinger. Hey, let's nuke this place. Let's nuke this goddamn place, Henry. Let's just show these goddamn commies. I wonder if I can actually find the script. Richard Nixon wanted to nuke Vietnam. Like, here's the... This is way back from 2002. I wonder if they've actually got the, like, actual conversation. Because sometimes they do that. Sometimes they actually show the conversation. Oh, did I just get paywalled? Yeah, I got fucking paywalled. Dumbass. Oh, God damn it. Henry, we should just nuke him. Yeah, whatever. Okay. I was gonna have fun doing the impression and everything. Oh, Henry, we should just fucking drop the nuclear bomb on these goddamn... And that'll show these... Like, Jesus Christ, maybe not. Like, fucking maybe not. And I've heard people be like, oh yeah, Nixon was just drunk and all that kind of... I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck if he was high on, like, opium. Like, I don't give a shit. I don't care if this guy was in the middle of an LSD trip talking about fucking dropping nukes on Vietnam. Like, fuck that. Get rid of that fucking shit. Unbelievable. Oh, this is crazy. Just taking a quick left turn here. It has to be known what was done to us. Natick couple harassed by eBay tell their story for the first time. So here's the fucking couple. Here's the story in a nutshell. So these two, when eBay first started, these two started like a guide to eBay, right? They created like an eBay newsletter, basically, that people could buy in order to like learn how to sell shit on eBay really well, right? And as eBay has grown and like shifted and changed, these guys sort of shifted their newsletter to be less of a guide or a how-to, which they still do, but also kind of a critique of eBay itself, being like, you know, this isn't so good, or they're saying this or saying that. And so eBay hired people to start harassing these people, right? No fucking word of a lie, guys. Like, right. It was June 2019. He had no clue that the vandalism was just the start of a bizarre harassment campaign directed by senior executives at one of the country's leading internet companies, eBay. Ultimately, the events would shatter the Steiners' peaceful suburban life, result in criminal charges against 6 eBay employees and a contractor, 5 of whom pleaded guilty, and contribute to the departure of eBay's chief executive. Right? These types of companies are psychopathic, right? That here literally are two, just like an elderly fucking couple, literally just printing a goddamn newsletter, right? And these people hire people to harass them and cause them problems. Like, you're fucking psychopathic. And so it's like, this is why we can't allow billionaires to exist. Because billionaires don't trickle it down. They do fucking childish vanity projects and they harass people. That's what they do. That it's like mafioso type shit. Like, just get rid of these fucking guys. Just get rid of billionaires. Yeah, John F. Kennedy also talked about an airstrike in Cuba, a larger airstrike, or a full-scale invasion with his advisors, yeah. And just casually mentioning killing thousands of Cubans. They're just brown people, dude. Right? They're just brown people. Who cares? Right? You learned that in Harvard University, right? The brown people don't count. No country is safe for fascism. Well, America's pretty safe for fascism, right? They do everything they can to make it so that, oh yeah, we should be able to talk about fascism. Freedom of speech. You can't, I should be allowed to espouse my fascist doctrine, and if you don't want me to espouse fascism, then you're the fascist, right? That's the best they got. Like, that's the best they've got. You're the fascist, and it's only fucking whingy liberals who get caught in that shit. Who are just like, oh, I guess I do have to allow fascism to exist, because if I don't allow fascism to exist, then I'm the fascist. Oh, no! Meanwhile, the fucking socialists and the communists are, get the fuck out of here with that juvenile bullshit. If you stand up and say that you want to round up people or you want to destroy people based on their race, then you have no fucking rights. You have no fucking rights. Get the fuck out of here. Like, if you saw a rabid wild dog, right, in the middle of the street, right, and then you saw somebody pull out a rifle, right, shoot the rabid dog, would you say, like, oh, you hate animals? No. I mean, it's a fucking unfortunate situation, right? It's a fucking unfortunate situation that there's this rabid dog that needs to be put down, and that somebody had to take the unfortunate task of pulling out the rifle and shooting this rabid dog. It's a very unfortunate situation, but only a fucking moron would say that that person hates animals or that it shouldn't have been done, right? Everybody in their right goddamn mind would be like, that was an unfortunate thing to do. That guy did the right thing. That was tough, and it had to be done. And yes, I am comparing Nazis to rabid dogs. Yes, I am comparing Nazis to rabid dogs. And I'm fine with that. What is this? Oh, yeah, this is straight up the document from how ExxonMobil funded a propaganda campaign. This is the climate deception dossiers. Straight up, just like, I'm going to be reading through this. But straight up, internal fossil fuel industry memos reveal decades of corporate disinformation. Right? Like, my goal is to go through this and pull names and to create a document myself that doesn't bury these guys' names in, like, a bunch of investigation or anything, but is literally like, hey, here's this guy. He should go to jail for this reason. Hey, here's this guy. He should go to jail for this reason. U.S. Senator James Inhofe of Oklahoma, now chair of the U.S. Senate Committee on Environment and Public Works, has famously and repeatedly called climate change a hoax. So, U.S. Senator James Inhofe, off you go. Off you go. Incarceration. Thanks. The fear of truth coming out is overwhelming to some. Losing everything is a reason people lose their minds. It's all about the money. Well, and it's all illusionary. That's the thing that's insane about all this, right? The money is, and like, the money doesn't mean anything, right? It's not the money that's feeding you, right? It's somebody's work in a field as a farmer, right? And like, we pretend as though the money is actually creating an environment where, like, oh, that farmer's hard work is being rewarded and all this kind of, but it's not really. Like, and what's so stupid about this is if all you did is said to somebody, hey, you can have a big old house, the nicest trucks and cars or whatever you want, right, and that kind of thing. You can go see whatever show you like, but you got to work this field and you got to live in the kind of this rural environment. I bet you there'd be like, and that's it. Like, you know, no like big money game or any of that kind of shit. Just literally like, that's the life, and that's what we're saying to you. I bet you there's thousands of people that would be like, yeah, okay, cool. Like, I live in this house. I got all the sweetest toys I want. I just have to, you know, produce food from these fields. I think people would. I think lots of people would bite on that. I mean, lots and lots of people would bite down on that. That the money isn't actually helping all that much. It's just letting like a parasitic organism called the financial industry to take over our society and warp it to their own interests. And their own interest is to do fuck all while we do all their work for them. Yeah, money isn't a static thing. Labor is. Exactly, right? And like, like, if we genuinely dismantled this system, right, and just said, okay, we need to have food production, right? People need food, right? Obviously. And we just said of people who are producing food, you can keep doing that. But, like, if we said to the financial industry, like, I don't give a fuck about you at all, go the fuck away, right? Bitcoin, all that shit, just go the fuck away. Get out of here, right? I don't think we'd miss it. Like, this is the thing that I really want to drill into people's heads. I think that if the entire financial industry were to just cease existing and disappear completely from our society, we wouldn't even notice or care. It's completely irrelevant, and yet it's like 40% of our economy. Like, I don't understand why we are so insistent that the way to live a happy life is to waste our time like this. And it is a complete and total waste of fucking time. We're just like shuffling papers around so that we can get enough money so that we can turn around and buy food and shelter. It's like, how about we provide the food and shelter, and that's just a fucking gimme. And then we operate, then sure, we can operate a free market off of that. Well, guess what's going to happen? A ton of these worthless, pointless, harmful, absurdist, psychotic, sociopathic industries will just stop existing because people will be like, no, I've got food and shelter. I don't need to participate in that nightmare. I don't need to participate in that shit, right? And it'll just fucking go away, right? And I genuinely think that that'll happen. That's why it is a big reason why I support the basic income, because I'm like, I just genuinely think that lots of people will just be like, oh yeah, I'm not interested in operating, like, I'm not interested in working at Wendy's. Like, I'm not interested in working in these fucking psychotic, demonic enterprises that are actively structuring themselves to destroy us. Just not interested. And, like, there's your actual voluntary economy. Like, capitalists lie to us all the time and pretend like the economy, that capitalist economies are voluntary. If you're saying that shit out loud, you're completely detached from reality. No, it's not, right? It's not voluntary. The only choice you get to make is which one of these psychopaths you get to work for, right? That's the only choice that exists. It's not a choice, and it's certainly not voluntary. That the system that we actually operate under is called wage slavery, and it should be understood as a wage slave system. By the way, as Abraham Lincoln understood it, he actually ran on it. As the Southern slavers understood it, they called it a wage slave system, right? We're living in a wage slave system, and the capitalists are doing everything they can to lie about it or delude themselves, right? Because it benefits them to do so. And again, stop participating in that stupid nonsense. Get rid of these conservatives, get rid of these fucking liberals. What is this? Oh yeah, Exxon knew about climate change almost 40 years ago. Yeah. Oh hey, here's some great Olympic weightlifting. I just think it's neo-feudalism is a good term to use. Yeah, I use that term too. Like, it's not, certainly it isn't capitalist any longer, right? Look at that shit, dude. Look at how powerful that shit is. I don't even know how much weight that is, but 100 kilograms, so 242 pounds that she just lifted above her head. 242 pounds. That's like an extra 40 pounds of me. That's what that is. It's me plus 40 pounds lifted by this woman. That's fucking incredible. You go. Do it. Do it again. Ooh, lift that shit up. Just deadlifting it and then throwing it above her head. Unbelievable. People are astounding. And she's doing that fucking at the Olympics for free. She doesn't get paid for that. Right? The Olympics are a scam. Pay these fucking athletes. Like, the idea that people won't be productive. Are you kidding me? She's fucking... Look at how productive she is. Right? Lifting this shit above her head. She's not getting paid. Right? The Olympics doesn't pay her. Oh, yeah. From the Gravel Institute. The national eviction moratorium has expired. Biden and Congress did nothing. This is an absolute catastrophe. Like, that's coming from the Gravel Institute. Like, how much longer until, like, we're literally going to be seeing tweets from, like, Dairy Queen like this, right? How much longer until we're literally going to see like a Ben and Jerry's tweet that looks like this? How much longer until it's just like so aggressively like we cannot ignore it anymore? But we're just like it's just so fucking much, man. I don't know. Oh yeah, that's just fucking yeah, bah. All right. Oh yeah, this is something crazy. So this is the bothered boy, who I'm super jealous of because he's doing exactly the same thing that I'm doing, except he's got like 3 times the amount of followers that I do. How dare you? How dare you have more followers than me? But he just does this, and I think this was very powerful. It was a very powerful moment. Oh, is this going to kick off the ad? It's going to kick off the dumb ad. Yeah. Capitalism, the dumb ad.
Here's what's bothering me today.
Look at this fucking shit. Look at this fucking shit. For those of you just listening, it is literally like a sea of tires. Just a sea of tires. Complete empty tires. The sound that you're hearing is the sound of a tire fire in the distance that is just billowing an endless stream of black smoke into the air. A sea of tires. This, in my view, is capitalism. This is the innovation and the efficiency of your capitalist model right here. A sea of tires in an empty field surrounding an endless stream of burning rubber, pouring poison into the atmosphere.
That is basically an endless sea of discarded tires that are burning. We have a lot of work to do on the climate crisis.
Yes, we do, brother. Yes, we do, bud. Yes, we do. So a little bit of good news coming out of the Toronto Star. Aaron O'Toole approaches an election with a party so fractured that some Conservatives want him to lose. Good. Good. These guys are fucking fascists. They deny, like, this kind of thing, this kind of fucking thing with the tire fire that I just showed you. This isn't a concern or a crisis. This is just the free market deciding, right? This is just how the free market has decided to deal with this, bro. What's the matter? What's the problem, right? Because they don't think climate change matters, right? So the billowing smoke that you're pouring into the atmosphere, that doesn't fucking matter if you're a conservative. That's just dealing with the problem. How else are you going to get rid of these tires? This endless pollution that you're spewing into the atmosphere has no consequences because we don't believe in systems. We don't think that there is such a thing as a system, right? We don't believe in systemic racism. We don't believe in systemic wealth inequality. We don't even believe in the systems of the universe because we don't believe in science, right? We don't believe in any of that stuff. We believe in Jesus. That's what we believe in. We believe in the power of Jesus Christ. And if this is a problem, then Jesus will come down and solve the problem. Like, and this is where they're fucking at. This is where they're fucking at. They're so far fucking behind that they literally can look at this tire fire of burning garbage, a perpetual sea of death that is never ending and will always seek to poison the atmosphere so that we can have rubber tires on our stupid go-go mobiles. And conservatives are so fractured that some conservatives want him to lose. But guess what? I bet you if you actually read this article, you would find out that the reason why I don't want O'Toole to win is because he's not a racist enough. He's not a white supremacist enough. I'm going to look over to that People's Party. They seem to be the real racists. They're the real white supremacists over there, brother. These conservatives seem too namby-pamby. I'm not... we're not burning enough. Why is there a sea of tires? All these tires should be on fire. We should start polluting all of these tires. That those are the conservatives that are like, yeah, I want these conservatives to lose because they're not fucking white supremacist Nazis enough. Oh yeah, here's something I was contemplating showing, but I'm out of time. I'm actually gonna link this into the chat, and I'm gonna put it in the Discord as well, because this was actually the boss needs you. You don't need him. Labor is entitled to all it creates. This is an interview that Chris Hedges has done with an investigative reporter surrounding Ghislaine Maxwell, who Ghislaine Maxwell is like the partner, basically, of Jeffrey Epstein. And he really points out the odd inconsistencies and the strangeness surrounding this trial. And he really goes in to how it's, in his view, it looks as though Ghislaine Maxwell is being set up to be the scapegoat, and that they are not going to be pursuing any extra investigation or any extra interest surrounding any other people regarding this issue, right? So people like Donald Trump, people like Bill Gates, people like Bill Clinton, right? Prince Andrew. They're never, ever, 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 ever going to be investigated. They're never, ever going to be focused on. It'll never actually happening. Mach says, your life is ultimately meaningless. There's no point in living or working because no matter what you do and no matter how hard you work, you'll always be at the bottom and you'll be grinding yourself into a machine until the day you die. How is that not nihilism? Well, I mean, that's not really my position because we don't know what life is about. Like, that's my position ultimately, is that we don't know and it's worthy of investigation, right? That my life ultimately does end in death, but my life is not the end of life, right? The true nihilists, I believe, are the people who are denying climate change or denying the larger systems, because they see the end of their life as the end of life, and that any activity or action that occurs outside of that is irrelevant to them, right? Like, my position is strongly that we don't... Yeah, exactly. How is capitalism not nihilism if this is the set of beliefs that it creates? And it's not even trying, like, when Stephen Harper uses this word nihilism, right? And the reason why I responded, I think, to the way I did, Mock, is because recently Stephen Harper said of Marxists, of Marxists that were nihilistic. And it's such a childish usage of the word and a misunderstanding of what nihilism is. Like, it really is, and I said it in the video, it really is like Darth Vader saying of Luke Skywalker, you're a nihilist because you want to blow up the Death Star, right? And that Darth Vader looks at the Death Star as an ostensible good. Whereas, of course, Luke Skywalker sees the Death Star as a bad. I mean, for God's sakes, it's called a Death Star. And and of course, capitalism is this sort of nihilistic. But the thing is that I think the difference is that the capitalists don't believe they're destroying. I think that's the thing. The people who are genuinely deluded, they genuinely think that they're actually building something, but they're not, right? They're not. Like, what are they building? Like, what is it that's being built? Yeah, like how some people use socialism as a buzzword. That socialism is when the government spends money. Yeah, like that kind of reductive thinking. And it really, Matthias, it just flows into like our culture is very illiterate. We're a very illiterate culture. We're not, like, we don't really know what thing, like, nihilism is when you want to destroy things. Like that's kind of exactly. I think that is a really good comparison. Socialism is when the government spends money. Nihilism is when you want to destroy things. Like, no, dude. Like, we want to destroy systems that are not working. Like, we want to destroy systems that are hurting us, right? That's not nihilism, right? We're not standing here saying that life is meaningless and everything we do is pointless. If that's what we were saying, then we wouldn't destroy anything, because what would be the point of it, right? If it's all meaningless anyway, why hurt ourselves? Why take the time and the energy and create the enemies that we do? Why not just, if you're a nihilist, why not just, try to become buddies with the sociopaths and just live this life with Jeffrey Epstein, right? Like, that's the nihilism. Just find as much joy as you possibly can, because life is inherently meaningless, right? And no one, incidentally, no one is more nihilistic than the evangelical Christians. No one is more nihilistic than the evangelical Christians. This idea that, like, oh yeah, things will be so much better when we're dead and in heaven with Jesus, like, that's fucking nihilism, dude. Like, that's super nihilistic. And this idea that somebody like Stephen Harper can turn around and say of the Marxists, who literally are trying to save the planet from a climate change disaster, turns around and says that we're nihilists, it just shows you how desperate they are. It just shows you how desperate and stupid they are. And it's so stupid. Like, you gotta be a moron to believe that. Can trickle-up economics be popularized, says Ward. How you doing, Ward? I think it already has been. I think that idea of, like most people understand that the neoliberal trickle-down economics model has no credibility, that it's fraudulent and it's inverted, that it is an inverted way of looking at how economics should be thought of, and that that neoliberalism essentially says if you empower an institution or like a prince or a king, like if you empower a billionaire more, that wealth will trickle downward. But it's the opposite, that you need to empower. It's so odd that it's the individuals that need to be convinced that the appropriate thing to do is to empower individuals, right? Like, oh, if you empower individuals, that works. And the people who are standing against that idea are the individualists, right? Because they don't actually think, and they're not actually logical. They don't actually, like, they don't actually think through what they're saying, right? They see the idea of, like, oh, a government giving money to individuals is bad somehow. But a government giving money to a billionaire, that's fine. Like, it's they just don't think these fucking things through. Good night, Ruth. Thanks for popping in. I always appreciate it when you're here first thing on the Monday. I'm always nervous about the Monday. So thanks for being here, Ruth. And trickle-up economics will not solve the issue of consumerism and sustainability. Yeah, I think I see where you're coming from on that, Dave. Because, like, a lot of the problem is that we have this ethos of consumption. This just ethos that I can eat or consume or do whatever I want at any time, and I don't need to consider, not only do I not need to consider the future, right, the future generation or the future people, not only do I not need to consider that, I don't even need to consider my own neighbors. I don't even need to consider the people in my general vicinity who I see and who I know exist in the world, right? Like, that is the great success of neoliberal capitalism, is to have us turn our backs not only against our children, but also our neighbors, right? Like, that's been a massive success. And something like a shifting to a different economic model won't ameliorate that we are in a cultural struggle. Yeah, because at this point, the capitalism is able to distract us people with shiny things. Yeah. Well, and that's why they don't want us to, that's why they can't afford to have us stop, right? Because if we stop, we'll begin to see, we'll begin to see that all of that is pointless. Like, and it is. It's just a distraction. It's just shiny baubles, right? Meanwhile, the great questions of our civilization and the great questions of our existence are just not being asked, right? Why are we here? What are we doing? What is this for? What should we be pursuing as a people? What should we be investigating? What should we be learning? What thoughts can we have? What systems can we erect and create? What can we do as a people in order to benefit the generation that comes after us? None of those questions are even asked in the capitalist system. The capitalist system says, how can you be amused right now? And that's the best it can do. And I just see, if it wasn't even for if it wasn't even for climate change, if it wasn't that we were marching towards our own death, right? I just see an entire generation of people coming to the ends of their lives and sitting in total misery because it's been a complete and total waste. We've spent no amount of time actually trying to figure out, what is this place? Why is it even here? What is it doing? What are we doing? How do we interact with it? How do we live in it? How do we make it flourish? How do we make it grow? How do we make it so that the next generation is better off than we are? We're not even trying. We're not even trying. And I just picture a group, especially like millennials and Gen Z, outside the climate change thing, right, where we're all just going to get totally destroyed and fucked. And these questions that I'm asking are so pressing that the boomer generation has deluded themselves into thinking Jesus will be on the other side of this thing, right? That the question is so overwhelming and overpowering, and their unwillingness to actually confront the capitalist system that's preventing them from investigating these things, that they've had to create a fictional narrative that obviously isn't true. And so they can just placate the dread that they've completely wasted their lives here. All right, guys. On that incredibly positive note, it is my duty to remind you that each and every one of you are divine beings standing in divine energy. You are important. You are special. You do matter. Every single part of you, every single one of you, that if you're doing something to try to ease the burden of this capitalist nightmare and you feel guilty about it, stop feeling guilty about it. As long as you're not hurting anybody and everything's being done with consent, stop feeling guilty about it. You are dealing with a nightmare scenario here, and you are surrounded by people who do not give a fuck about you. Well, I do. And the people here do. And we need to keep moving forward, to keep finding ways to have and remind everyone around us that we need to give a fuck about one another. Because if we don't give a fuck about one another, we're not going to give a fuck about the universe. We're not going to give a fuck about any of that. So, you are a divine being, standing in divine energy. We could use some of it right now. Good luck. We're going to need it.